Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Domkin, what's it been like getting to watch your Huskers up close and number one team in the nation?
It's amazing to be able to see these young ladies. I remember my days back when Jordan Larson was actually playing, watching her in the Coliseum, and see her now being a coach, making these young ladies the greatest of the country right now. So it's awesome to see.
They win a national title. She could get her third today. And her role has evolved with every single team that she has played on. And she continues to deliver no matter what that role is. Becca Alec in the middle. Saved by Halter right on Swindle's head. Scrapping play by Nebraska. Missed timing to Bergmer. Bergen Riley getting offensive. Riley pushing it to Harper. Tricky. Another out-of-system set coming to Maddie Skinner. Triple block, but Merritt Beeson ate it all up.
Not much is said. There's just a lot of tears, but we're just really proud of each other. We've had a great season, and this match doesn't really define how our season went. We've lost 2 matches all season. So this match doesn't really define how our season actually went. So we're just really proud of each other and the way that we fought all season to get to this point. It's really hard to get to the championship match, and we did it. So we're proud of each other.
Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on a Monday. We were hoping to be celebrating a national championship this morning. That is unfortunately not the case. I'm Ravi Lulla, Avery Howard here with me. We're on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, and ESPN Tri-Cities. Of course, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. Avery, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It is not the Monday morning show I thought we were going to be doing on Friday.
I know.
For a couple different reasons. Number one, Nebraska Volleyball's kind of dream season comes to an end.
Yep.
Number two, we are still waiting on some very high-profile teenagers to make some announcements. And well, I guess that's it, because Nebraska basketball did win. They had a nice win against Kansas State.
They did do well.
Creighton had a nice win against Alabama as well.
They did. Omaha won. Girls won.
Yeah, so basically everybody but volleyball and Dylan Raiola happened. But let's start with volleyball. The thing that I kind of just left, and we can get into the nitty-gritty of like what actually happened during the game if you want. But the thing that I just kept thinking about yesterday as I'm watching this match unfold, and I don't know, it seemed pretty clear to me early on that I was like, oh, something weird's happening here.
Yeah.
And I kept hoping, it was oddly similar. And I know Nebraska fans are going to hate this, but, and every time I say that, I'm going to bring up Creighton. But it was oddly similar to when Doug McDermott's senior year ended against Baylor, where you have this dream magical season, and then it ends in kind of the most anticlimactic, just disappointing way possible in a game where it feels like you're never really in it. This match, I kept waiting for that moment where Nebraska would just kind of click and turn it on and just flip the switch, and it just never came. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Set 2, they have all of the service aces. Set 3, they just never really get in it. And you just sit there looking, and you just keep waiting and waiting and waiting for it to click, and it just doesn't happen. And so I left that. Well, first I'll ask you this before I kind of get into what I was thinking afterwards. But as you're watching this and processing that, like, are you kind of in the same space, just thinking about like, hey, like when are they gonna go? Like when is the engine gonna start?
Yeah. Well, the biggest worry I even had coming into this game, as excited as I kind of was for Nebraska to play to play Texas. Just for it to be a new opponent. After watching Texas for Wisconsin on Thursday evening, the service line was my biggest concern. And when you serve with high risk, it does come with high reward. But it does come with high risk. And I think that's something that Nebraska's trying to balance this year, is becoming tougher in their serves. And as just this young group is just, trying to evolve over the season. And unfortunately, it had been maybe a small foreshadow, because if there was one area that Nebraska kind of struggled this year, it was from the service line. And I think the biggest thing is service puts you in a game and it takes you out of a game.
Yeah.
And so, Coach Cook said it in the simplest, you don't have rhythm, you don't have momentum, you really don't have much in volleyball.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is when they had so many aces and passers on this Nebraska team were struggling, like, they probably haven't felt in a while. Once you feel like the basics have gone away, that's when, you question everything all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they've had a moment where they've had to question many things this season. So I think I mentioned it yesterday, but if I know this group and their mentality, and we already heard it a little bit in the press conferences last night, I don't think they'll be outserved again next season, or at least that will be the goal going into next season. And I think there's a fire that's been lit that we kind of already thought had been burning all year long, which I think that's exciting when you know that a team is this young and they went to a national title, and then yet you're like, they haven't even hit their ceiling, not even close. Right. So I think that gives Husker fans hope, and that probably gives this team hope. But yeah, I mean, obviously I sat there in a little bit of disbelief, but it's just hard when you lose that momentum and that rhythm. Like, you have to take your hats off to Texas, unfortunately. And
you're almost a little shell shocked, like in the moment, because you're not totally sure what's happening, because it's a completely foreign thing to what you've seen all year. Right. And so, I mean, the rhythm part is really, and I'm not, again, I've said this before, I'm not going to pretend to be a volleyball expert, but you can kind of, just watching as much sports as you do, even if you're not super tuned into volleyball the same way I am, like football or basketball, is you can just tell the momentum of a match, the rhythm of a match, like Coach Cook was saying, and with their inability to handle, even when it wasn't an ace, their inability to handle Texas's serve and get themselves into a place where they felt good and they felt like they were like on system and everything like that. It was just such a kind of discombobulating experience from a fan standpoint. So I have to imagine in the moment, it for the players as well, they're probably feeling something similar.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that you kind of make it a good point. Not only was it not the aces, just when you're out of system to begin with, a lot of the times that throws everyone for a loop. So yeah, it was. I sat there after that 10-point run, and
you kind of just realize, like, oh, this isn't happening. You're like, this isn't going to go the way we thought it was. It's the thing that I walked away from afterwards, like as I'm kind of processing what happened, was this thing that I've thought a lot about in the last few years. As I don't know, this is going to sound like a very like old man take, and that's fine. But as I've gotten kind of older, as I watch sports, I feel like I enjoy the seasons more. And what I mean by that is, when I was younger, I used to let how the season ended really impact how I felt about the season as a whole. And I think that would be a mistake with this Nebraska volleyball team, because like, you can be disappointed. I'm disappointed. I think everybody's disappointed. They're disappointed. You saw it on their faces, right? And it's not to try and be like, oh, well, it's okay and whatever. Like, it sucks that they lost the national championship match to Texas the way they did, right? But I don't think that should take away from how special the season was, right? And we heard a clip from Ndamukong Suh with Anna down in Tampa, and like, Sue's senior year is a really good example of this, right? He had an incredible year. He had some of the most dominating performances I've ever seen in college football. Some of the most dominating performances I think I've ever seen in any sport ever. Like, there was a point against Texas where he is throwing grown offensive linemen, just tossing them.
But like one in this hand and one in this hand.
Like, he's being double teamed and he's just throwing both of them, one with each hand, and sacking Colt McCoy
with like his finger.
Well, like with the lineman that he's throwing back at him. And you're just watching this. You're like, they're adults. Like, what is he doing to these people? And that was some of the most fun, despite how terrible that offense was that year. Watching Sue just dominate that year was so much fun. You know what I don't think about that often? The 1 second. I really don't.
Like, it haunts you, but like you're not. You're like, it happened.
It's
but
almost,
like, I remember this.
It's almost more like, punchline's probably the wrong word, but it's kind of just like, it's almost a joke now. Like, you see Texas fan, you're like, that 1 second wasn't good, right? Like, we saw Anna down in Tampa giving Texas fans a hard time, and some of them are like, probably not. But I remember him. I remember like him just ragdolling Blaine Gabbert against Missouri.
Yep.
You know, I remember him returning. I remember him scoring touchdowns as a defensive lineman. Like that's what I remember about that 2009 season. I don't even remember the bowl game. I couldn't tell you who they played off the top of my head. I could not do it.
2009.
Yeah,
I think it was Clemson.
Was it Clemson? Yeah, because I kept thinking because Arizona was 08, I think, right?
I think so.
And so I'm trying to remember in my end, but like that's kind of my point is. Thank you, Bo. You know, like I remember that part of it. I brought up McDermott's senior year earlier. I remember the 3,000 points on senior night. I remember Ethan Rogge against Villanova. Like I remember those things. I know Baylor happened. Like I know they lost in the second round in horrible fashion. I don't really think about that when I look back at that season. When Doug McDermott gets his jersey retired on Wednesday night against Villanova, ironically enough, I'm not going to be thinking about Baylor. I'm going to be thinking about him dropping 45 against Providence and Ed Cooley just having no idea what's happening. Yeah. Like, and you know, I don't know if that's I'm sure some people will be like, oh, that's because you guys lost or whatever. It's like, yeah, the wins would have made it better, right? Winning the Big 12 championship would have made Sue's senior season that much better. Making the first Sweet 16 in Creighton history would have made Doug McDermott's senior year that much better. I'm a big Steph Curry guy. Like, if the 73-win Warriors had won the NBA title, that would have made it that much better. You know what? That's still the most fun I've ever had watching basketball, was watching them in that regular season. And so, at getting back to Nebraska volleyball, I don't want, you know, like, this shouldn't ruin the volleyball day in Nebraska.
100% no.
Like, this shouldn't ruin all of the joy we experienced this year from this team.
100%.
And like, I know for you, like that volleyball day in Nebraska is one like an all timer.
Yeah.
Like probably not just even a sports memory, right? Like it's just an all time like
100%.
Core memory.
100%.
And like it didn't. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, are you on the same page?
No, I'm 100% on the same page because I think there were some immediate reactions yesterday. It was like, that was such a disappointment and yada yada yada. But I think
and like it's a bummer.
Yeah,
sure.
But like we don't have to tell them that. Like if there's anyone in this program, or I would say, this program at Nebraska. Some of the biggest competitors that I've watched, and maybe it's just because I've covered them more closely.
Sure.
But they make you want to compete again.
Yeah.
They play with such a fire and admiration for one another that, and I'm sure as a former athlete, you can feel this too, but like you want to be a part of a team again. And yes, we're a part of a team in other ways, but I want to go onto a court now.
Yeah. And you want to fight with somebody.
With someone because they make you feel that. And I think the biggest thing about this group is that, I mean, this is something that I would tell everyone. And the reason why it stands out to me is that they enjoy the process while they're in it right now. They're enjoying the journey while they're in it. And I think so many times athletes walk away from these huge games or these huge seasons. And it's like, oh, I wish I would have like really enjoyed that. Like that's all gone for me now. It's all gone. And so I think the little things that happen on and off the court, these girls love deeply. Like they love to compete, but they love the entire thing. And I think that's the biggest thing that this fan base and just everyone that's covered them has love so much this year. They bring character, but they also bring fire, and they have this healthy balance that everyone can appreciate. And so that's why it's hard to look at this last game and be like, oh man, got to scratch that one, right? Like you put this entire season together, and some of their highest points came at games that outsiders would have thought it would have been Wisconsin, and Merritt Beeson's like, no, it was Penn State. Yeah. Like it was Stanford. Like these are the ones for us that were these big ones that, you know, you start realizing how many, you know, tally marks, you're like, wow, how many huge things. And so you'll never be able to take that away from them. They won't take this away from a fan base ever. I mean, I think every Husker volleyball team that comes along, the fan base loves them, but it feels like they've made this fan base fall in love, like truly again. And there was just a different spark this year where Nebraska volleyball is a top 10, top 5 program every year. But after 4 or 5 games this season, it was like, ooh, this is different.
This team's different. Yeah.
Like, and I had a conversation actually with a former Nebraska volleyball player, former setter, a few weeks ago. And she's a few years removed, so she doesn't know a lot of the girls personally, but she was just saying she felt the same sentiment. And she said, this is a very selfless group and their success is reflecting that. But also she said that when we watch these young hitters and we watch these young girls on the court play, it's such a seamless just connection because they do things so well that we're not even questioning how hard the difficulty is.
Yeah.
Like Merritt Beeson and Andy Jackson and Becca Alec and Harper Murray are swinging out of their shoes every single approach almost because they're being set up by a freshman setter.
Yeah.
And when you appreciate the talent on that level and realize how seamless the whole season was for the most part, like you can't take one game and be like, well, that was a scratch.
Yeah.
And so I think just when you look at the whole thing and just the way it made everyone feel, that was the biggest thing.
Yeah. Well, it's the way it made people feel is the important thing to me here, right? Because that's really what I'm talking about when I'm using these other examples is how did that team make you feel? Not how did their season end? Not did they win a championship or not? And a lot of times the championship is what makes you feel a certain way, but the way they made you feel while you were watching them throughout the season, that to me is, I don't want to say more important than championships at this point, because I don't think that's true. It's more important than I ever thought it would be in my life in terms of how much I enjoy watching a team or not.
Yep. I think, did you happen to listen to some of the press conferences or the clips that were posted?
Yeah, so I listened to as much as I could. The one that really stuck out to me was, I think it was Merritt Beeson.
Yep.
Where, and you kind of touched on this a little bit with them enjoying the process and enjoying being with each other and the selflessness. Like the first thing she brought up about what was special about this team was how much 1 through 14 they loved and cared about each other, right? And first of all, for next year, that's awesome. Like that's a terrific foundation to be coming from, right? But it also kind of underlies my point here. Like they're going to remember this season for how it made them feel, for their teammates, for their coaches, for the fans at Volleyball Day in Nebraska. It's not going to, don't get me wrong, Texas is going to fuel them for next year, but 10 years from now, they're not going to remember Texas. They're going to remember the rest of it.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I brought up, like every single presser that we clipped yesterday, one reporter asked the same question, how would you sum up this year? And every single one of them, almost every single one was like, I'll remember the friendships I created so quickly this year. I'll remember. And some people were like, are they leaving? It's like, no, they're not leaving. They're just saying that this is how special it is. Like they're truly talking about how important the chemistry in this locker room is. All of these girls are new. Yes, they came a semester early.
Yeah.
But like,
still.
Yeah, like you would never know. And every single one of them, I mean, none of them even mentioned Volleyball Day. None of them mentioned Wisconsin. Not a single one of them. And I'm sure they'd go more in depth. Maybe that comes up. But it was that they're good people and that they appreciate all 14. And that's a special aspect of being on a volleyball team. Like there's 14 of you.
Yeah.
It's a small group. Like you have
small enough that
large
enough that it's weird that not all 14 of them are that close.
Yeah.
But big enough, but small enough that it is actually possible, right?
And also I think too, like the size of it, if something's going wrong or there's a few, I don't want bad apples, not the right word,
no, but like unhappy,
like
passengers on the ride.
Yeah. It affects the whole thing. Like there's no way in avoiding it. So I think we saw that on the court as well too. So I think it speaks just to the point that you're making. I mean, every single girl that spoke yesterday, that was their first thing. And they're like, we're proud of what we did.
Yeah.
I mean, we feel sick to our stomach too, but like we love this team. And that was the overall message.
And the thing that I kind of would encourage is, we hear a lot about whether it's Coach Cook, whether it's Coach Rule, whether it's the players talking about the process and that it's about the process. And if you do the process right, the results will come. I feel that way kind of as a fan. Like enjoy the process, like enjoy watching this team grow together and become close, and enjoy the moments of Volleyball Day in Nebraska and Penn State and Stanford and breaking the Wisconsin streak and like all of those, like enjoy all of those parts of the process and don't let it be contingent on how it ends. Because if you actually did enjoy the process, if you actually do enjoy the journey of the season, then the results are bonuses, right? And like, that doesn't mean you're not competitive. That doesn't mean that you still don't want to win. Like Coach Rule wants to win as much as anybody. Coach Cook wants to win as much as anybody, right? Like this isn't it's okay to lose type thing, but you're going to get, even when you win, you get more out of winning when you enjoy the process along the way.
Sure.
Like that's a huge part for me, because you look at so many of these, whether it's teams or fan bases or whatever, it's like, they may win at the end, but it's so toxic by the time they get there that you're like, I didn't even enjoy
how
that.
enjoyable was it?
Yeah. Like I look at like Alabama is a really good example right now, is they've gotten so spoiled. And like, I would love to be in that position where this is a problem, right? But they've gotten so spoiled with all the national championships and all the winning seasons and
Mhm.
everything that Nick Saban has brought to that program, that now they lose a game and the sky is falling, right? And it's like, hey, do you not realize like how fun this has been for you? Like if you're an Alabama fan, you know how fun that's been for you. Whereas, and I hope, because I do think Nebraska's on the come up. I really do. And we'll get to some of the reasons why coming up later. But God, I hope after what Nebraska fans have been through in football, that when it comes our time again, that we do not act that way.
No.
Because
complaints are a no more.
Like, listen, I can understand being critical like in games,
right.
but like for the love of God, enjoy it this time.
Yeah.
Because you know it's not forever.
Yep.
Like Nebraska fans more than anybody know it's not forever anymore. And so when it happens again, like I just want to like shake their faces like Billy Madison and just say, cherish it. Like it is not promised to you. And like, I hope Nebraska volleyball fans are in that spot today too.
You know, I think it was interesting because there's some people that I follow that played volleyball last year, and NCAA has done some stuff with them, and they invited them down to Tampa this past weekend. It's kind of like volleyball influencers basically. And from the content that this one former player had made, she went around and basically asked random fans who they're cheering for if they had, you know, gear on or not. 80% of it was Nebraska. And then another person that I follow that's influencer-ish, her family was in the volleyball arena. They went down as a whole entire family, have no connection to Nebraska, no tie whatsoever, all cheering for Nebraska. There was not a single Pitt fan in this girl's video, all these things. There was very minimal Texas fans. And so that's the biggest thing is along this journey this past season, this group has not only really captured the hearts of the owner fan base, but they've done it in such a way that they've kind of transcended the volleyball game and become such an inspiration to so many people just because, volleyball, they did give them a platform, but the way that they've gone about just every home game and the things that have been put on social media about them and the way they speak about the game, about their friendships, about the program, like they've drawn such a positive attraction and just, you know, like people want to come watch this team outside of being a fan base. And so I think that's something that's a win in this team's book too. And these girls might not know it. They don't see all the things either. So from a fan base perspective, something to be proud of, obviously, because I know there's teams out there that are winning that people are always cheering against. And that's not Nebraska right now. And so for them to be a team that this country can get behind and rally behind and support, like, I don't know if we would always be saying that the rest of the country wants Nebraska to win all the time.
Yeah, no, it is kind of a strange.
Yeah, so it was cool to see that like different corners of, you know, the nation, whether they just had a tie to volleyball or not, fell in love with this team too. And so I think it's a sign that, you know, they're doing something right. And fortunately, we've said it all year long. A majority of this team comes back for the next 3 years. So you know, they have time to grow, and I'm not worried about them.
Plenty of opportunities to finish the deal that they so desperately wanted to yesterday. Real quick, coming up on the show at 8 a.m., we're going to have Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. At 8:45, we'll have Dan Wolken from USA Today to talk college football and college basketball. At 9:45, we will have Jason Cole. He's an author and a Pro Football Hall of Fame selector to talk about the NFL. And, there's a bunch of stuff going on with recruiting. Dylan Raiola. We will cover that in depth, all that and more coming up on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
I'm just gonna remember all the amazing relationships I made. I mean, there's 14 girls on this team, and every single one of us is best friends, and so we're not gonna let this one game define our entire season because we realized that there was a lot more to our season than just this.
How valuable is this experience?
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
I'm just going to remember all the amazing relationships I made. I mean, there's 14 girls on this team, and every single one of us is best friends. And so we're not going to let this one game define our entire season because we realized that there was a lot more to our season than just this.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, the H&H Chevrolet stage. You can find us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook as well. Lots of volleyball content on the YouTube comments. A lot of appreciation for Skinner of Texas and the match that she played yesterday. Just overwhelming for Nebraska, honestly. And so appreciate everybody chiming in on the YouTube comments there as well. That's Avarie Howard. I'm Ravi Lulla here with you on a Monday. As I mentioned, as we were heading into the break, we've got great guests lined up for you today. Sam McKewon will come talk to us from the Omaha World-Herald at 8 o'clock. 8:45 will be Dan Wolken of USA Today, covers college football and college basketball. And then Jason Cole, covering the NFL, will wrap up the show at 9:45. I also want to get into a little bit of this Dylan Raiola stuff. Not that we haven't talked about him at all over the last week or so, but I kind of want to give some context later in the show about why this is a big deal, because I'll admit it feels silly sometimes to be waiting on a high school senior to tell us where he's going to go to college. But when you look at the guys that have been in this spot before in terms of ratings as quarterbacks coming out of high school, I think you'll understand why it's such a big deal.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that later on in the show. I did want to start with some updates on where we're at with Dylan Raiola, which is we are nowhere. We are nowhere.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, please enlighten me because I would like to know.
Basically, we're in the same spot we were on Friday. We're in a holding pattern. To be clear, I do think he's announcing that he'll come to Nebraska on Wednesday. I do think he's going to wait till Wednesday, which is National Signing Day.
Which is like fine, but like
I was hoping it would come out Saturday before the volleyball match. And then after the volleyball match, I was like, you could do a lot to kind of endear yourself to Nebraska fans, lift our spirits here a little bit, bud.
I know. I did say like at the middle way through the week last week, I was like, there's a lot of things that could happen here, but if he does get in the way of volleyball, Nebraska is just set for years of more karma. So just play it safe. But you could do Sunday night, win or lose. It's okay. It's fine.
True.
I just my life is basically being controlled by this 17 or 18-year-old kid for the last ever since this news dropped. Literally a week ago.
Almost exactly a week. Yeah.
Yeah. I basically had everyone on the team ready with every possible outcome, situation, story, video, graphic, everything.
Yeah.
And I every single time I go do something, I was in church on Sunday sitting there. I'm like, I haven't checked my phone in 30 minutes. I'm like, what happens if it was this morning? I was like, don't look at your phone. You don't need to look at your phone. Have 45 minutes without it. And I was like, but like, could you imagine the 45 minutes I'm not paying attention? It happens and my team now needs me. So I'm like looking zero. Okay. I was like, great. I need to stop thinking about it. And then later I was like driving and like I've had my sound on for the last week.
Yeah.
I have this kid on Twitter alerts. Like literally he's controlling my life.
Yes, it's true. He's controlling all of our lives, but yours more than most.
Yeah, literally. And so I'm like, basically, I've told everyone, I'm like, here's where everything lives. Here's the plan. We'll go over it again. Here we go. And every single time that I'm not on my phone for 20 minutes, I'm like destined to know that it's probably happened. And now I've left everyone in the dark.
I was playing Friday night. I was playing pickleball, and I was like, watch, he's going to do it now
100%.
while I'm not paying attention.
100%.
Or like every time I get in the shower, it's going to be like, this is the time period, this 15 minutes or whatever. This time period is going to be exactly when he announces, and I'm going to be 20 minutes behind everybody else by the time I look at my phone. It hasn't happened. There is no announcement. I do think it is coming on Wednesday.
Are we able to like contact Buford High School and be like, hey, what time's your signing day?
So it should be early. It should be, honestly, it should be during the show.
So the key word there is should.
Yes. Okay. At this point, everything is a should.
Yeah.
I have no reason to believe he's not coming to Nebraska.
Yeah, right.
We kind of talked about this a little bit on Friday when Elijah was in, but like at this point, it would be so awkward to go back to Georgia. I don't even know if that's like he might go somewhere else. I don't think he's going to Georgia.
He looked like he was having a jolly dandy good time this past weekend in Nebraska.
He did. And
we've seen that before.
We have.
We've seen bones thrown.
He was at baseball games. He was at basketball games.
He was at wrestling this weekend.
He brought his buddies. Yeah, he was at wrestling. And then I think he was watching the
women's basketball.
And
whole crew was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I have no reason to believe he is not committing. There was a light show going on Friday night at Memorial Stadium that some people are, think maybe they were filming some sort of content with a certain high-profile recruit that may or may not be Dylan Raiola. It's pretty hard not to see the lights on that stadium in the middle of December at night when you're like, hey, what's going on there?
What's going on there? There were a lot of them there, so they could be putting something together.
They could, maybe we'll have like a nice little announcement of a group of guys. Maybe they're trying to drop a big, DB on Friday hinted at
surprises.
Hey, there might be some surprises on Wednesday, and he wasn't talking about Raiola. So Then he, kind of walked it back a little bit. Oh, I mean, maybe like nationally, if you just play the odds.
I'm just speaking in general terms.
Yeah, there's a lot of surprises happening outside.
Yeah.
Okay, DB, whatever you say.
I just needed to get here,
Yes. Listen, we're Nebraska fans. We're going to go through the most pain possible before something good happens. Yeah. So we're really crossing our fingers that it's going to happen on Wednesday. Maybe he brings a couple of friends with him. But that's where we're at. There's no announcement, unfortunately. That would have been really nice if.
Yeah, no, there's still nothing. There's nothing.
What I have heard, just, rumors, because why not? It does sound like there might be some friends coming along. Yeah. It sounds like, it sounds like.
You know what? That is the scary thing about working in the media realm is that you tend to know a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But you don't know the full deal usually ever, obviously.
Yeah.
So you know more than the common person. And so obviously with that comes a lot of great responsibility. So I'm not saying we're sitting here right now being like, we know things, but like we have a lot more leads, I would say, on a lot of situations.
Well, you just hear things.
You do.
Yeah.
But then you have to sit here and preparation. And then when it doesn't, you also are, at that point, you do become the common fan.
Yeah.
Because you're prepared for basically every lead that you've potentially heard.
Mm-hmm.
Which is nice. It's a privilege to know some things.
Yeah.
But because you know more, it's also like a little bit more agonizing, I think.
Also, the truth of the matter is, like, I don't know, 70% of the leads don't pan out.
100%. So you're the first-ish usually sometimes to happen to hear what's like the inner circle discussion sometimes.
But you're also often the most confused.
100%.
Because a bunch of the stuff that you heard was happening doesn't happen.
Yeah. And I will say, I don't know did you see the climate of Twitter this past weekend with people getting upset about like people announcing just like stories or whatever they may have? Mm-hmm. I thought that was kind of interesting because these writers and recruiters and stuff, like they're working with the best that they know. Yeah. Like, did you not want them to write that Kyle McCord did have a great visit on whatever? Like
literally a week ago.
Multiple people heard that. I mean, he had a good visit.
Yeah.
They're obviously, they know a lot more than even we do. That's their job. They're recruiting coordinators and they write recruiting for Nebraska.
Yeah.
And everything that pointed in the right direction at that point. And then people were like so upset about it not all coming true. And it's like, unless you live in Kyle McCord's head, you're never going to write the perfect article.
Well, and that's the funny thing about this whole thing, right? Is the information may be good. Mm-hmm. You're still dealing with between like 17 and 22-year-olds.
Yeah, they don't know yet.
Change their mind a lot.
Yeah, they don't know.
And so, like, I think Kyle McCord had a great visit.
100%.
And then the Raiola stuff happened, and the entire landscape of what he was looking at changed.
Yeah.
And now Kyle McCord is at Syracuse.
Yeah.
Like that.
Was Syracuse on the radar before? As a huge contender?
No, it was Nebraska. I mean, if the Raiola thing doesn't happen, I am I would say like 97% sure Kyle McCord is committed to Nebraska.
Right. Like, I know it shocked me yesterday for the most part when during the volleyball game it said breaking Kyle McCord to Syracuse. Like, I known that it was semi on the radar, but it wasn't like I was thinking he's going to go from Ohio State to maybe Nebraska to Syracuse.
Yeah, after the Nebraska thing fell apart, Syracuse was the main contender.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was before the Raiola. So basically exactly a week ago, we were talking about the McCord stuff. The Raiola stuff hadn't broke yet because that happened in the afternoon. And I would have told you 97% sure that Kyle McCord was coming to Nebraska.
Right.
And at that moment, I believe that was accurate.
I know.
Like, that's the tough part is you say you tweet things out or you say things on the air or you write a story. And at the moment you wrote it, it was accurate.
That's all you know.
And it was accurate at the time. And then 8 hours later, you might have some breaking.
Yeah.
Dylan Raiola decides he wants to come to Nebraska, and it's like, well, see you, Kyle McCord.
Yeah.
It's a super fluid situation.
Yeah.
Matt asks a good question on YouTube. Matt, we will get to that coming up next here as we wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back. We wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the H&H Chevrolet stage. I'm Ravi Lulla. Avarie Howard here with me this morning. And we are having an okay morning so far, trying to process through some things. Matt on the YouTube channel asks a good question here. He says, any take on the report of him still being in contact with Kirby Smart and not decommitting from Georgia? First of all, the whole time, I didn't think he was going to decommit to Georgia until he committed to Nebraska. So he has not publicly decommitted from Georgia. That does not mean he has not decommitted from Georgia. Somebody over the weekend on Twitter pointed out not publicly committing and having not decided yet are not the same thing.
I did see that, actually.
So that's important to remember.
Yep.
A lot of these things are, especially as you're looking at, kind of cryptic emojis and gifts from coaching staff members and stuff like that. Like, there are things happening. Obviously, coaching staff members can't talk about players until they have signed, but they can tweet out gifts and emojis and things like that, which they do a lot, apparently.
They sure do.
But I wanted to take Matt's comment here, and I think it's important for a couple of reasons, because we've seen when you're dealing in rumors and speculation and secondhand information, which is what all of this is, right?
Yeah.
None of us are talking to Dylan Raiola himself, except for like coaching staff, people
Yeah.
within the program, stuff like that, right? So there is an inherent fuzziness of information when you are dealing in secondhand information, right? So here's a really good example. We were talking about the Kyle McCord situation.
Yeah.
And how it related to Dylan Raiola. We were about 97% sure Kyle McCord was coming to Nebraska. And we know from what we know about Matt Rule that he's not guaranteeing anybody jobs.
Mhm.
That's a thing that I can say pretty confidently.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing he didn't promise Kyle McCord the starting job. And I'm guessing he hasn't promised Dylan Raiola the starting job. But here's where the situation changed, right? We were 97% sure it was Kyle McCord coming to Nebraska. The Dylan Raiola stuff breaks. All of a sudden, Kyle McCord doesn't want to come to Nebraska anymore. Well, guess what? If you say it's an open competition and your competition is Chubba Purdy and Heinrich Harburg, you're like, yeah, I'll take my chances in that open competition. No offense to Chubba Purdy and Heinrich Harburg. All of a sudden, you have one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the country, depending on what service you look at, top quarterback in the country. And you're like, oh, that competition looks a lot different now. That looks a lot like the competition I was trying to get away from at Ohio State. So the exact same information could be true. You add in an additional variable, and Kyle McCord, all of a sudden, not so interested in a open quarterback competition at Nebraska.
Yeah. I would like to be like a fly on the wall when Kyle McCord is flying to Nebraska. And all of a sudden, whether we think it or not, or maybe stands true, out of the blue, here comes Dylan Raiola. Like, was there an inkling from this coaching staff that they had an idea? Because for some odd reason, like maybe they thought they were going to bag McCord and him. But for some reason, I don't know if they would push as hard as they did originally for the McCord situation. Be like, hey, this might be our guy. Let's go up to Columbus and let's make sure he gets down here and whatever it may be. And then the freaking day before he gets here, Dylan Raiola is like, oh, hey, by the way, I don't know, but let me just throw this out here and see what you guys think. Like, I have a hard time wondering if they saw it coming that hard too, because it seemed the timing was like
super odd.
Yeah. And so I think on McCord's end, he was probably like, hello. And they're probably like, hey, no offense, but we didn't know either. But like, maybe they did. I don't know. That's why I want to be a fly on the wall and be like,
so
were they like, was it like a scene from The Office where they all busted open their doors and like flailing around? Like, you know, like, were they all there on a Monday night?
Oh my God, it's happening.
like what the heck? I want to know.
Yeah. I mean, that's a super valid question, right? Because I don't think they knew.
Right. Like, I want this included in the documentary thing that Coach Rule said they're ending, but I want it, and then you can end it.
I need a GBR rewind on this deal here. You know, it's a super fair point because I don't think they did know. I think they may have kept open lines of communication with Dylan, obviously, but I don't think they thought it was a possibility still. And that's from everything I've heard. Like, this seems like it was a fairly, like, I don't think this was this well orchestrated. Yeah. I think things went sour with Georgia.
Yeah.
And Georgia's probably trying to make those things right now because he is a 5-star top quarterback in the class type guy. Like, you try and fix that if you can. So to go to Matt's question a little bit here about them still being in contact. But I do think there was a time where they thought they could get both.
Yeah.
And here's where I think things kind of can get misconstrued in this game of telephone that we've been playing, right?
Yeah.
So you hear, okay, Kyle McCord might be coming, Dylan Raiola might be coming. They're both okay with an open competition. Well, Kyle McCord maybe was okay with an open competition in the morning. By the time Dylan Raiola gets on the scene in the afternoon, yeah, sure, Dylan Raiola is still okay with an open competition. All of a sudden, that information about McCord being okay with an open competition is outdated, right?
Right.
Because the competition looks different than it did 12 hours ago.
Sure did.
So both things can be true, and now one of them is no longer true.
Yeah.
Right? And so that is one thing you're dealing with. The other thing you're dealing with is, okay, you see the situation, and all of a sudden it looks like Dylan Raiola demanded a starting job to come to Nebraska. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily true. What we know again about Coach Rule is probably not guaranteeing jobs to anybody. Kyle McCord can leave on his own without. Yeah, I was gonna say that, and I was like, I'm gonna stop there, but thank you.
I got it.
He can leave on his own because the situation has changed. That doesn't mean they promised anything to Dylan.
Yeah,
like Dylan may be coming in and saying, like, yeah, I'll be in a competition against anybody. I don't care. Whereas Kyle McCord, he's in his last year of eligibility. Very specifically wants a place that he is going to get featured.
Yeah.
Which makes a ton of sense for both players involved, by the way. And so we can all of a sudden people start assuming, well, hey, Dylan Raiola must have demanded the starting job. That's why Kyle McCord's not involved anymore. It's like, or all of a sudden the situation in Nebraska started looking too much like the situation at Ohio State.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to say out loud, by the way.
Yeah.
Like that didn't feel like a thing that was happening in the quarterback room a week ago.
No.
But when you hear things like, oh, is he still in contact with Kirby Smart from Georgia? Totally fair, right? But what does that mean? Does that mean Georgia's texting him, calling him, and he's just not ghosting him? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of different ways you can take that information. Like, being in contact can mean a ton of different things and not have it be like, oh, no, this guy's falling for Nebraska. He's going to leave us at the altar again.
Yeah.
And so just be careful because I swear to you, like 3 days ago, people were freaked out because they thought Dylan Raiola was demanding a starting job.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, Coach Rule can't do that, whatever. It's like, okay, that I don't think is what happened. From what I know, does not seem like that's what happened.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. When the bomb dropped last Monday, I made it into like a metaphor a little bit of like a toxic relationship situation. And it, for some reason, just keeps like the bit just keeps going where I said like Nebraska fans are like in the other side of the toxic relationship where, you know, the one person says they're going to come back and be different and they put a little bit of effort in and then you believe them. And so every time there's a small piece of hope, like you're over the moon.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I felt like Nebraska fans were at Monday night. It was like, oh no, he's kind of back. And when I say he, I mean the whole embodiment of a little bit of Nebraska's success, right?
Yes.
Like, okay,
yeah,
we went to 4 straight losses. We are in the dumps. So it is done, right? It is done. Like, it's going to take a lot to get me back this time. And then here comes Dylan Raiola, and it's a small piece of hope. And then everyone's like, you know, they always come back when you least expect it.
Yep.
And yeah, it just keeps going. It just keeps going.
It's
so,
kind of like
everyone's made me laugh because they're like, "Hi, it's me. I'm the problem." And like everyone's responses are like, "But would you not believe him this time?" And I'm like, I love that everyone's got it.
Maybe he's changed.
Yeah, literally.
You know, it kind of reminds me of the line from Dumb and Dumber, where he's like, just when I think you can't get any stupider, you go and totally redeem yourself. Like, we are the stupid ones in this situation, but I still think it's going to happen.
Yeah. Literally, like, he made his decision. We were at peace with it. We were doing okay.
Yes.
And
we had moved on.
Yeah. And now he's come back in and it was exciting. And now it's like, oh my God, we're obsessed. You know, it just keeps,
Dylan Raiola is Nebraska fan toxic relationship, but it might work out this time, guys. Corey says it's only been a week. All this started. It feels like 84
100%.
years. Yeah. Every day I feel like I'm the Titanic old woman, the me. Like, it's been 84 years. That's how this has felt like I think I said in the group chat, I was like, we have to deal with this for 3 more days.
I know. 3 more days. I know.
I'm hoping
I know.
by 48 hours from now, we will have conclusive decision.
Yeah, and then I'm logging off my phone. I'm throwing it away.
just throw it in the ocean.
Yeah.
Just like the Hope Diamond. Just throw it in the ocean like the old lady.
I'm committing to like a phone detox over my quote unquote Christmas break.
It's true. It's been a lot. So that's where we're at with Dylan Raiola. I do want to come back to more of that a little bit later to give context of why we care this much. Heath asks, how do you think DK feels after everything went down this weekend? Seems like there's still excitement there. So he's talking about Danny Kaelin from Bellevue West, who was committed or is committed still, was going to take a visit to Michigan State. Looks like Nebraska was able to keep him in the fold. He canceled the visit to Michigan State, which is a big deal for Nebraska. I mean, I've been critical of Danny Kaelin, but it is really important for their depth in that room.
Yeah.
And for the relationship with high school coaches and everything in the state of Nebraska that they treat him well.
Yeah.
And I think they have.
Yeah.
But it's also like, hey, you've got the top quarterback in like it's a weird spot to Geez, Shane, you're gonna kill us over here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep you on your toes over there.
Yeah.
My stream's dead, but it looks like you got part of it. But
yeah,
oh my God.
I got my energy drink already, Shane. I don't need the help there. Whew. We'll address Danny Kaelin either with Sam or at some other point once our heart rates have dropped a little bit from that jump scare that Shane gave us. All of our screens went dead, so I think we're at break. I don't know what the clock says anymore. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. And that kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
Welcome back. Kicking off hour number 2 with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi Lulla, Avery Howard here with me. Sam joining us now on the War Horse Sportsbook Hotline. Sam, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Happy early holiday. Thank you, sir. Yeah, we won't get to talk to you before either of the upcoming holidays, so appreciate that as well. Sam, let's hop right into volleyball. I know a lot of us were expecting to feel quite differently this morning than the way things played out. As you look back on the season, on the match against Texas and how that played out, what's going to stick out to you the most about this specific Nebraska volleyball team?
Oh, great story. Just a super story all season long. A team that I feel like really embraced the expansiveness of their team and the sport and all those things. Just a great combination of youth and excitement and talent. And, so yeah, I mean, everybody, this is going to be a special year, irrespective of the conclusion. That would have been true if they'd lost in the Final Four instead of the final match. So all that's still on the table. Very memorable. Certainly not the end they wanted. But yeah, I mean, this is the year that college volleyball took a step as a sport. And Nebraska played a role in that, a huge role in that. And sometimes that's bigger than a championship. And that's not to downplay what happened yesterday. Obviously, they're disappointed, and they'll have to chew on that all offseason. But this was a leap year for the sport, and Nebraska helped provide the leap.
Yeah, for sure. You had a lot of your team down there in Tampa, and I know we did too, but it seems like with no surprises, the overwhelming support of Husker Nation showed up. And just, did you hear any stories from your team, or just really what it was like in first person to just see the support, especially when the team entered, and just what that was like for this team?
I like that the NCAA has a blue carpet for the teams kind of coming in. I think that's a great idea. I would like to see it, used in basketball too. And so there's a lot of red around that blue carpet. So I think that's the coolest thing. And so that you had, you had an opportunity for the fans and the athletes to interact in that way. And I think that was probably really special.
Yeah.
And John Cook does actually not dole out compliments easily. And so if he says Tampa did a really good job, then they did a really good job. And I think he means that, and it's probably a template for how you do things going forward on some of the other sites. As especially when it isn't located in Wisconsin, Nebraska, Texas, one of those states. When you don't have it in those states, you have to do something a little extra.
Yeah.
And I feel like they did a great job.
Yeah.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, you mentioned how you thought this was the year where volleyball took a step forward nationally. First, I guess just what gives you that indication, and how much you mentioned Nebraska playing a role in that. What role did Nebraska play in that?
The world record attendance match played a role in that. Everybody's kind of seen the photos from that now, and I think they realize what's possible, and how that looked and how that felt, the TV ratings. So the NCAA is taking multiple sports back out to contract, and they're exploring decoupling some of the packages. So like ESPN, ABC, ESPN mostly, purchased the volleyball championship as part of a bundle.
Mm-hmm.
And the only things that were separate from the bundle, I think, are the CWS, college football is its own thing. CWS, basketball, men's basketball, women's basketball, CWS, I think are the only ones that are sort of separate. And then there might be some smaller ones that I'm not aware of, skiing and crap like that shows up on NBC or whatever. I'm not saying it's crap, but you know
Right.
what I mean. But most of them are bundled into a contract with ESPN ABC. And so ESPN has sandbagged the sport of volleyball for some time. I mean, they're putting, third-rate bowl games on. No offense to the FCS playoffs, but the FCS playoffs, which are not nearly as popular as volleyball matches, the NBA or whatever. So when the NCAA decoupled it, though, see that forces ESPN ABC to care more,
Mm-hmm.
and Fox wants it too. And so Fox has an ability to vote, to vie for very specifically the volleyball thing. They don't necessarily have to vie for the whole thing. Like Fox doesn't have to put on, the track championships and all these other things, wrestling, whatever. Fox can zero in on volleyball. And so you're going to see the sport of volleyball get a huge boost on TV because the NCAA decided, we want to value this sport in a way that maybe is different than we have in the past. And you're going to see it really grow. Right now, volleyball is behind women's basketball and it's behind softball. And at least for the national title, it's behind gymnastics. Now we'll see what happens when the ratings come out here in a couple of days. We'll find out how the ratings did. The sweep doesn't necessarily help.
Yeah.
But so we'll see what happens. But I would say volleyball will jump ahead of women's gymnastics and then be right maybe behind softball. And then with the new contract, if it goes to Fox or wherever, it's going to grow even more. And with that will come challenges. It's welcome to the world of television. And they'll find that out real quick. I mean, Cook has had everything the way he wants it pretty much with his schedule for a long, long time. But now all of a sudden Fox is going to do a Wisconsin, Texas, Stanford, some other team, quadrangular or whatever you want to call that. And Nebraska's not a part of that yet.
Yep.
And so it's going to change. And it won't always be to Nebraska's liking what changes, but that's the nature of the sport. The bigger it gets, the more you got to compromise, and Nebraska will benefit in terms of visibility. The other thing I will say is the bigger the sport gets, the more parity exists. And so some of the advantages that Nebraska has will disappear. Not disappear, but they will get smaller. This happened in football too, and it will happen in volleyball, and people will have to get used to that. Nebraska, it's going to get harder to win every single match for Nebraska volleyball. That's a good thing for the sport, but it'll be an ongoing challenge for Nebraska. And I'm not saying that specific to Nebraska. I'm saying that's the nature of sports when they get bigger.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I wanted to kind of get back to that a little bit on just how Ravi said, you said this was a big step for volleyball this year, and Nebraska was at the forefront of that. And it felt like this past weekend down to the Final Four, whether you were a Husker fan down there or a neutral fan, it felt like everyone was cheering for Nebraska. And it just felt like most of this nation, from what it seemed like from coverage and social media and just, people we were following, that they've fallen in love with this Nebraska team. And we talked about just it's this young team and their mentality that makes you want to be a competitor again. They put a fire in you as a observer. Just as you've covered this team, your team's covered this team. Just like, have you been around a team like this at such a young age that plays with such a fire and just a mentality such as this team?
Not exactly. No. I think it's unique in that way, and I think Cook has called it unique.
Yeah.
I think it's unique for him too, because I think they've had some teams that are better than this.
Yeah.
That have more talent. They had a team with Sarah Papp and Jordan Larson. I think a lot of those teams though felt the pressure more, and Titans were a little tighter.
Yeah.
Than this one is. Now that said, they faced an adverse moment in the NCAA title match, and they didn't respond the way that they responded the way you might expect, actually, from a team that hadn't lost much and was very young. But that's not how they hoped to have responded. So, for the first time all year, their youth showed a little bit. And it cost them. Lindsey Krause being hurt didn't help. We won't, she was unhealthy, so we won't know how it would have turned out if she had been. Probably a little different. Because I think Lindsey's, a good player. Would have helped his team this year. So there's that. I think people they just have a unique combination of personalities on that team that really coalesce this year. You've got a couple that are, you've got Lady Chilboy's really fiery. So is Harper Murray. Anybody watch the post-match press?
Yeah.
I was more struck by her than I was Becca because, I think Harper was really upset and angry.
Angry.
In a competitive way, not a devastated way, but in a pissed off.
Yeah.
And so she's obviously, the star of that. Bergen Riley's very polished for a freshman, very composed. And then you have all the other pieces. So, yeah, I think people came to really enjoy that team, like all the components of it. Then you turn on the match, and ABC ESPN spent a lot of time on Texas, specifically, Asia O'Neal, and rightly so. She was a player on the court in a lot of ways. And, she's got a famous dad. And so, it's once you turn on the match, I think everybody's like, oh, Texas apparently is a better team here. And, and they played like it.
Yeah.
But, Nebraska's going to have to – one thing I will say, and I've covered sports long enough to be able to be confident in saying, no one year is the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of the things that were true about their chemistry in 2023 will have to be rebuilt in a slightly different way in 2024. It's part of why, and I wrote this a couple times, I said, this is the year. This is the year to win. This is the team. This is the year. They got the thing together. You just can't guarantee what happens from here. Sometimes people get hurt. Some people leave. Some people get tired of each other. You can't guarantee chemistry year after year like they just had it. So it's a missed opportunity in that way. They've got to get better. I think they will. But I think at the same time, they're going to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, we had this magical season where everybody got along. How do we bottle that up?
Yeah.
And how do we keep that going? And that's going to take some work on Cook's part because this, the spell, so to speak, was broken on Sunday, and now they got to restart the spell, and that's not going to be easy when you don't have when everybody's not new to this. They're going to be going through it again, and it'll feel like more of a grind. And we'll see how they figure it out.
We're talking with Sam McKewon of the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, let's change gears here a little bit and move on to some other Husker topics. How much time have you spent trying to decipher cryptic tweets this weekend?
Not much. I mean, it'll all happen by signing day.
Yeah.
And we'll just have to see what happens. So, Dylan made the rounds. He was at the women's basketball game briefly for a while, I guess, yesterday, and wrestling match last night. Eventually, and here's what's interesting. I think this is, kind of like, I don't know how you would explain it, kind of like a marriage, I suppose. Here's what's going to happen. He's going to sign if he signs with Nebraska, he'll be a Nebraska quarterback Wednesday, December 20th. And then all of a sudden, it has nothing to do with pursuit or potential.
Mm-hmm.
It has everything to do with development. And yes, 5 stars need that too. And a lot of them transfer. So everything that Nebraska has, led up to this point, they then have to pour a ton of energy into crafting a vision and a development plan around this kid to make him better. And also, because he hasn't been around the recruiting class a ton, to mesh him with everybody else. And I think he'll do a good job at that. I think he will. He's what do you call it? Seasoned veteran at fitting into new places. He's been at 3 different high schools. But it's a whole different task. And everybody will talk about it on Wednesday about how great it is, and that's fine. But I mean it when I say it's a task of a different kind. And it's daunting in its own way to have somebody so talented. Because it's almost like, well, now I got to do something with this. Like, I can't just sit here and lean on, he's learning. People don't expect the 5-star to learn. They expect him to be good off the jump. And don't count on a transfer quarterback either. I would not count that out. I think that's still a remote possibility of pairing him with somebody who's a lot older, a lot more seasoned, so that he doesn't have to walk out there against UTEP and make it happen from the first snap. Like, I think there's a real benefit to giving him some time, and so we'll see how they tackle it. And we should also not pretend that Matt Rule's done this a lot before.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great coach and all the rest. He hasn't had a lot of 5-star guys. That's not been his thing. He's done, the 3-star ham and egg guy that, is a game manager and all the rest. So this is not that. And so it's going to be new for him too. And it doesn't mean he won't handle it really well, but it's new. And so we'll see what happens. I know I'm striking a cautious tone, but I think it's important to, because we went through this with Adrian Martinez, and, it didn't turn out the way that everybody hoped it would. So I hope somebody's talking to Adrian about how to make this thing work a little bit better based on his experience.
Sam, you mentioned that Coach Rule hasn't really done this before, but if I remember correctly, isn't that kind of one of the reasons he said he took this job, is the access to talent that he didn't feel like he ever had at Temple or Baylor? I think that's something he said in one of his first press conferences in Nebraska, wasn't it?
It is. Comes with challenges. Yep. Yes, for sure. Absolutely. Comes with challenge. Everything today, and these guys make a lot of money, I know, but everything is hard.
Yeah.
It is hard.
It's a harder job than it used to be. Yeah.
Oh, it's just hard. It's hard to be this. It's hard to be managing a football program, even the most talented one. I mean, you don't think Kirby Smart stayed up, I don't know, however many nights in a row, just sick over losing that game to Alabama. John Cook is going to stay up thinking, what did we do wrong? Why did everything we did, we get to this moment and they're hitting some pretty good serves and we fall apart? That's what this is. And so, and nobody, I'll say this for Rule. I want to say this the right way. He works harder than the last three head coaches.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about it. And I feel like I'm in a position to say that because I've watched and I've observed and I've heard. Rule works really hard. And so nobody's questioning the effort. The effort is there. The savvy is there. The structure and the system and the systemic thinking is there. All those pieces are in place that if they get Dylan, that's great. And, that bodes incredibly well for future seasons, so long as you manage it right now. And he'll have a plan. I mean, there's no question he'll have a plan. We'll see how, we'll see how it goes. He's never had to get a quarterback out of the transfer portal either. Not like he did Jeff Sims, and that didn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure he learned a lesson there. But nobody works harder than Rule. He works real hard, and so it's going to be a bunch of different things all at once that they're trying to figure out. Again, they got to find a way to get better at that position. They certainly have a talented player. I could talk for half hour about what Dylan does really well. I've watched a lot of film. So, really talented player, and if they get him, they're getting a really, really talented player.
Well, Sam, we will save that half hour for after he actually signs on the dotted line, but I will hit you up for that without a doubt. What I did want to do before we let go of you here is I did want to talk about Nebraska basketball. Had a big road win against Kansas State yesterday. Really impressive defensively in the second half against the Wildcats. As you continue to watch this team, obviously they've had some bumps in the road, but as you continue to watch this team, what are some of the things that you like that you think are transferable towards the rest of the season?
Oh, they're tough. They stay tough. I think they want to play hard. Juwan Gary is transferable. I think he's the guy that sets the tone and the pace for this program. And Rick Mass has played really well the last two games. I think they've got some guys on this team, including Josiah Alec, who really understand the value of rebounding and what it can do for a team. And so I think that hasn't always been a strength inside Nebraska basketball. It used to be when Danny Nee was the head coach, but it hasn't always been a strength. And I think that Fred Hoiberg has emphasized it in a way. He's got some guys down there who are good at it. So, the rebounding has been nice. And when they've had to hit, they've had a couple games there where they needed to hit threes, and they did. And they had a little stretch against Michigan State where it was a big deal. And then on yesterday, they hit 7 in the first half, or otherwise they go into halftime down by 10 or 12, and it's hard to make the comeback. But they were close enough going into that second half that they were able to dominate it. And making some threes in the first half made that possible.
Yeah, Coach Hoiberg wanted to bring in, an older group, but also a physical group. That was his biggest emphasis. And I think we've seen it prove so far early in the season just how much it's kind of changed the makeup of this team. But how much have you seen that physical aspect of this team just kind of help them grind out some more of those wins that maybe they weren't seeing in years past?
Yeah, I think it's definitely there, Avery. Gary again really helps you with that, so long as he stays healthy and good to go. I think he's a key piece there. And rink mass is adjusted. I think Missouri Valley's a physical league, not the most skilled league of all time. It's physical, so I think Mass was able to adjust there, and I think he's had a really good last two games. Alec is there, so some of it's the people that you recruit. And then I think some of it is just, an alteration in the staff, the staff that they had when Weber got there versus the staff that they have now, I think is a little bit different. So I think those things have really helped. And then, Nebraska's going to play a very specific style of defense. Everybody knows what it is. And if other teams don't hit threes, Nebraska's going to be hard to beat. They just are. Now, if the other team does, and Creighton did, then Nebraska is probably not going to change that much. They have a zone that kind of traps a little bit, but Nebraska is gonna make a choice on defense. Then they're going to get defensive rebounds. That's what they want to do. And if teams don't hit threes, and Kansas State didn't hit them, those teams are in trouble. So, Indiana rolls in here. I know they play, who they play, North Dakota and South Carolina State here in the next 2 weeks, and those will be walkover games. But, Indiana rolls in here January 3rd, and we'll just have to find out. That's a big game.
Yeah.
Indiana's good enough team to beat Nebraska by 15, so we'll find out what happens.
Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate your time as always. Happy holidays, as we'll be off the next couple of Mondays, and we'll talk to you again when we get back.
Take care.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Good stuff there with Sam, as always, covering a bunch of different topics. Joining us on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline. Reminder, Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. You can go to the casino in Lincoln, or you can place those bets in Omaha at Horseman's Park. That's 6303 Q Street. At Warhorse Sportsbook, you can place bets on nearly every major sporting event, pro and college football, basketball, baseball, golf, MMA, soccer, whatever else you can think of. Warhorse has you covered. Straight bets, parlays, props, live in-game bets, all accepted there. Visit warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook or get the Warhorse Casino app for details and a full list of house rules. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Coming up next, we're going to play a little Would You Rather with me and Avery here and see what we can find out, both on a sports and a random level as well. We're about halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. To Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Ziegler in front court. Back to James. Top of the key. A three on the way is good.
Money.
James is feeling it.
I believe the guy that sits in this seat most of the time would say money, but since we're in Texas, it's dinero.
Gives it up to Diarra. Starts left up the screen by Klingon. He goes alley-oop and Klingon crushes it. Oh, that was a beauty from Diarra. A gift Klingon delivered. A gift Klingon delivered. Klingon Klingon delivered the final score from Detroit. Write it down. It could be a turning point. Michigan State 88, Baylor 64.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. We are halfway through the show here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are also on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Lively conversations happening on the YouTube channel as well. Lots of people asking, you are aware he's still in contact with Georgia, right? Yeah, we did a segment on it. You can go back, listen to the podcast as well. But to answer that real quickly, yeah, I'd be shocked if Georgia was just like, oh, yeah, we're okay with losing a 5-star.
Oh,
no big deal.
Yeah, that's where I was at with my toxic relationship thing. Like, if you just ghosted them.
Yeah, like,
yeah,
I
forgot about that part.
I don't expect that to have happened.
Yeah.
You know, like, that is obviously one of the top 2 recruits in the country.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Right? Georgia's not going to just be like, okay, you can have him.
Yeah.
Like, that's nuts.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people think if Nebraska didn't give up on him that Georgia would now.
Unless, like, behind closed doors, there has been conversation that we're just obviously unaware of that have consisted of if Dylan and his family truly were unhappy, or if whatever that the report is coming on some of those things, that they were promised things and not upheld. And it feels like whether there is cryptic messaging from Coach Rule on
Twitter,
Pat's, I can't think of his last name right now. the show he was on last week. Pat.
Oh, Pat McAfee.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was
Jeez
like,
Louise, totally lost it. About just like how truthful you have to be in these recruiting conversations. And
Yeah.
I feel like he said that a few times, and it feels like he's hinted at that conversation a lot, even though that's just kind of who Coach Rule is. We know how important that is to him in this recruiting process. And it seems like from some of the rumors maybe we've heard about just Dylan and his family being promised some things potentially. And I had a conversation with someone about this over the weekend. And at the end of the day, like when you promise a kid, either whether it's a playing spot or it's a lot of money or whatever it may be, and then you aren't able to uphold any of that, at the end of the day, that's just lying to someone's face.
Yeah.
And when it comes to playing time, that's a different conversation to me. I think, what's the point of promising someone a big starting spot in my perspective, when they haven't stepped foot on campus yet and they haven't gone up against the guys you already have in your program, in which you probably potentially promised that at one point too. It's the point of open and healthy competition. However, if things were promised money-wise and such, and multiple things are now lining up that can't be promised, so those are conversations that we do not know are going on. We don't know if they have or haven't, but I'm sure some sort of conversation along those lines potentially has had to have happened if Dylan even decided to open up communication with Nebraska again.
Well, and I mean, I think we do know some of those conversations because when DB came out on Friday, he told us about some of those conversations, right? Sure. And he wasn't explicit about, oh, Georgia said this and then didn't follow through. But what he did say that I thought was pretty explicit was that this situation has way more to do with trust than it does money.
Yeah.
And he said he's been in contact with Dom. That's not a secret.
Yeah.
He has been in contact with Dom since last Sunday at the very least, before this all broke. And that is the thing that he took away from that conversation was, okay, it's one thing to promise a kid money and to be mad about like, oh, I'm not going to get the money I thought I was going to get. But what is at the heart of that is you told me something and it wasn't true.
Yeah. Before I even got there.
Yeah. Before I eat, like in the time that like it's the honeymoon period, right? In the time where you want to talk about like toxic relationships.
I told you, it just keeps going.
This is the love bombing portion of the relationship when you're recruiting somebody.
Get a car.
Yeah. Like the recruiting is love bombing. Like that's what it is. Right. And so if you're lying in that portion of the relationship, how truthful are you going to be down the line?
Incredibly true.
Probably not going to be real straightforward with people.
Right.
Whereas Coach Rule has been the constant in terms of, hey, this is what it's going to be. He talked about it on Pat McAfee, like you said. Can't really throw a sales job at recruits anymore.
Yeah.
Because A, they see right through it, and B, you have to live up to it. Otherwise, they're going to end up transferring.
Yeah, someone else could give it to them. Yeah.
This isn't one of those deals where, hey, once you get them on campus, they're kind of stuck. Right? That's how it used to be.
Right.
And so you could lie through your teeth to guys. And it's like, well, yeah, you can transfer. You're going to have to sit out for a year. People are going to forget about you. Good luck. Have fun.
Yeah.
Or you can stick it out here and see if it gets better. Right. So that's what a lot of guys did. Coach Rule's like, hey, just tell them how it's going to be. And if they don't want to be a part of that, okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're good here.
Yeah.
And Coach Rule, because he operates that way, you know exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Like I talk about this all the time, but when I met my wife now, is my second marriage, right? I was very clear up front about like, yeah, I don't go camping. I am not outdoorsy like that. There's some things that I'm just not interested in. I'm at that point, I was 30 years old. I was like, I'm not going to be interested in those things.
Yeah.
So like, if that's a deal breaker, like here it is up front.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend to like these things. Like I am too old at this point to pretend to like stuff I don't like. Right. And so like, you know what you're getting into up front, right?
Yep.
It's a much like healthier place to start things from because you just know like, hey, this is what it is.
Yeah.
Like if I want somebody that's going to go camping all the time, this is not the guy for me.
Right. And that's why I kind of wish I could be a fly on the wall in these situations. Like when, because Rule made an interesting point. Like we obviously know that coaching staffs, they're able to basically facilitate, not necessarily, but kind of those money conversations. Like, hey, we can't really do the money talk, but like this collective,
there's this guy over here that you should really
and
talk
we'll walk
to.
you over there.
Yeah.
Right. So, those things kind of happening. So it makes me wonder, I don't know how all the teams operate, obviously, but at Georgia, hey, here's our collective or here's our third party or whatever we have here. Here's what they are promising to give you through us, whatever it may be. And then because the pressure from the coaching staffs or whatever it may be, or however those conversations happen, which like I said, I would love to know because it's such a new market and such a new idea. But was it a third party situation too? Where it's like, hey, like we actually can't give this kid all these things. Like, you know, all like just because if what Coach Rule says is true, that we as head coaches and coaching staff technically can't be the ones to say, yeah, here's your dollar amount. And also here is your car and this new chain you want and all these things, like whatever it may be, or these deals or these brand deals, whatever. And so it's just interesting to be like, hey, how did it come down the food chain to eventually getting to Dylan that before you even get here in a few weeks, this ain't maybe going to happen. Just want to kind of forewarn you that he was like, I've heard enough. Yeah. And maybe that was the conversation he had. Like, hey, you know what? It's gotten too wishy-washy for me that I'm going to open up communication, which at that point was Kirby Smart. Like, you know what? Go for it because we can't uphold it. Or was it for him to be like, you know, like that's all the things that you want to know behind the scenes. Like, what are those conversations? We'll never know, but I want to know.
I'm guessing that's what the communication with Georgia has been, is them trying to reestablish that trust. And from what it sounds like, from what I've heard, from what DB's told me, like that's a big part of the reason they ended up leaving that Ohio State situation was because they were told things that ended up not being true. And when that happens, like the Raiolas are out. Yeah. Like that, from what I understand, like that's how they operate. So if you're not straight with them, if you're not upfront with them, like they're out. Yep. And I mean, that matters when you're talking about Coach Rule, because if there's anything we feel like we know about Coach Rule, it's that he's going to be straight with you. Yeah. And that he's not going, like, I feel pretty confident in saying whatever Nebraska has told Dylan Raiola, whether he signs here, whether he doesn't sign here, whatever, is 100% accurate. That's the thing I can say with confidence. Yeah. And from what I know about the Raiolas, that seems to be the thing that matters the most.
Yeah. I think there is an interesting conversation that spins off this that maybe is a topic for another time, but and I know we've probably discussed this in shorter conversations, but just where do we bring back the conversation of healthy competition is a good thing? Yeah. And whether or not they're being truthful to you or not, because it sounds like multiple places are willing to promise a lot of things without being able to uphold it until maybe after you get there or after you prove something. When do you start to bet on yourself and say, okay, you know what? You're not going to uphold that certain promise, but I'm going to go prove it to you. Because I feel like we saw a portion of that happening. And it's not that I wanted Danny Kaelin to be, have to give up a dream of playing at home either and go look other places. But at some point too, I know there's a 5-star coming in, but is 5-star Georgia high school competition, Big Ten competition? And how do you know that he's going to? Sure. Right. So it's an interesting situation that we see a lot in the quarterback room, obviously, because it's one position. But at what point is it going to have to change because NIL and recruiting process has drastically changed? I can only bounce around so many times and still not get a position because I haven't stayed somewhere long enough to prove that I know how to compete. I
want to put anything on tape, right? Like that's the other thing is at some point you have to put something on tape for people to continue to want to recruit you. Elijah brought this up last week, like with the Danny Kaelin situation. Like best case scenario, Dylan is who we think he is. He ends up at Nebraska. He starts for 3 years, goes to the NFL, and Danny Kaelin still has 2 years of eligibility left at Nebraska if he redshirts, right? Or worst case scenario, Dylan comes here, he's not who we think he is, and Danny can compete for the job anyway. Like if you're betting on yourself, you're still going to have an opportunity here at Nebraska.
I think Nebraska quarterbacks get hurt sometimes.
I was like, they played 3 starting quarterbacks this year who started multiple games. Something worth thinking about. All right, we will get to our Would You Rather game here in a little bit. We kind of got off on a tangent there. That's okay. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Dan Wolken of USA Today. He covers college football and college basketball here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Ziegler in front court. Back to James, top of the key, a three on the way is good.
Money.
James is feeling it.
I believe the guy that sits in this seat most of the time would say money, but since we're in Texas, it's dinero.
Gives it up to Diarra. Starts left up the screen by Klingon. He goes alley-oop and Klingon crushes it. Oh, that was a beauty from Diarra. A gift Klingon delivered.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I want to remind you that wearing your seatbelt saves lives and prevents injuries, but only if it's worn properly. Make it click. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Dan Wolken of USA Today. Dan, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you?
We are doing well. We appreciate you joining us here on a Monday. Let's start off with college football. It's kind of a crazy portion of the year because no games of consequence are being played, at least yet. I mean, no offense to the Cheez-It Bowl and whatnot, but there is still a ton of news and action going on with the transfer portal and the recruiting period and everything like that. How do you kind of process and cover this time of year when there are still technically games going on, but it seems like most of the action is happening off the field?
I don't cover it. And that's the great thing about it. I just sort of watch it all unfold. I mean, there's going to be a ton of movement. There's obviously going to be big names in the transfer portal.
now every year. There's a transaction season that's taking place. Clearly now a lot of kids, for whether it's financial, whether it's they just picked the wrong school, whether they just want a fresh start, they're going to jump in the portal. It'll be interesting to see, I think, as we go forward, how things change, because, now next year there's going to be 12 teams in the college football playoff. It's going to cause probably some real problems and conflicts to have the transfer portal stuff going on while that's taking place in the month of December. I think all of college football realizes that having coaching carousel season, transfer portal season, and getting ready for bowls and prep for the playoffs and all that stuff is a bad idea. It just doesn't work very well. So, I sort of follow the big picture trends of it and what's going on and what needs to happen to sort of get this thing in a better place. But as far as, the names moving around from day to day, I'll look up in the spring and see who's where. I'm just being honest about it, because it's sort of too much to deal with all at once.
It's probably a much healthier way to deal with this whole situation as opposed to us here in Nebraska waiting to see where 17-year-olds are going to go play football. But so I do envy you a little bit there. One thing that I did want to bring up, since, you were kind of talking about the structure of it all, is some of the comments that Chip Kelly made over the weekend about how he thought the structure of college football needed to change. How much kind of merit did you put into some of his suggestions?
Well, look, I think everybody understands right now that the top of college football, the power conferences, are operating in a way that is much different than the rest of college sports. 95% of college sports works pretty well. Talk about non-revenue, even men's basketball. There's challenges and issues there, but generally speaking, it works okay. It's college football that is different, and it's the highest level of college football that's different. Mm-hmm. And where we are right now is a result of a lot of mistakes being made, a lot of leaders of the sport not really understanding reality, not really seeing what was around the bend, and trying to just hold on to the status quo little by little for as long as possible. And I think that is now no longer tenable. Everybody realizes that. So there's got to be some sort of change in the structure. But the problem is, and I think where I sort of part company with Chip Kelly is, this idea that, you just get a few people in a room and hash it out. No, that's not the way this is going to work. There's too many schools, there's too many agendas, too many interests. I've sat through too many NCAA policy meetings and debates where even schools of similar resources just fundamentally disagree about the way things should work. And then you can look at all other examples from how the different conferences handled COVID to different states and what some are trying to do with NIL. Like, you just have fundamentally different views of the bureaucracy of college sports and how it should work. So I don't know that there's a great answer in there. It sounds good to say, well, just put somebody in charge or just have 5 people get in a room and hash it all out. In reality, I just don't think that's the way any of this stuff works.
I know so much of this is money driven, as we all know, but do you feel like it's going to go so far one direction where it feels like the structure has changed entirely? Now conferences look completely and drastically different, so much so that you think there will be a time in college football, or just, I guess, college sports in general, because the college football decision, or football makes the decision, that it reverts back to the way the conference alignment used to be, where people are going to want that comfort again, where it is divided nationally and by region, where it kind of made sense at one point, and that people are going to want to yearn for that comfort again in those old rivalries because it's gone so far one direction?
I think that's a nice thought, and it's an interesting theory, but I don't think that's the way this is ultimately going to play out. Because right now, if anything, the movement is toward getting rid of the dead weight and to maximize the true revenue producers in the sport. And so I think the next iteration of where this is going to go, it may be more regional for some people, but I think at the top of the sport, you're looking at more of an NFL style model where the most attractive brands band together. They get involved in some sort of arrangement where they sell all their television rights in one piece together and then cut out the little guys. I think a lot of people just look at the Big Ten, for instance. Next year you're going to be bringing in Oregon and Washington, and they're essentially coming in at like half of a revenue share for the first however many years of this deal, because they're new members and they were desperate and they didn't have a place to go, so they took less, right? But some schools like Purdue and Minnesota and Indiana, well, they're going to be making full shares. They're going to be making twice as much for the conference or within the conference revenue sharing as two schools that are going to be contributing more in terms of television ratings, eyeballs, and success on the field. How tenable is that? So I think when you just sort of look at where this is heading and what the trends are, it's not going to be toward more regional leagues. It's going to be toward the leagues that maximize the revenue for the top schools.
We're talking with Dan Wolken of the USA Today. Dan, I saw that you put out you're starting to put out a 10-part series on cheating in sports for the USA Today. I guess with the obviously Michigan ties and things like that, I'm sure had a big part in you deciding to do that. But what made you want to dig deeper past the Connor Stallions, Michigan situation and into the larger scope of cheating in sports?
I don't know. Just interested me, the whole topic. And it's something that I've been thinking about for quite a while, and just the massive amount of cheating that happens in all levels of sports. Different sports, different sports have different ways of cheating. You hear a lot about doping and PEDs, but there's all kinds of other things that go on, obscure things, in fishing tournaments and chess tournaments and stuff like that. So it just kind of sprang up from a conversation about how to shine a light on what was a relevant topic, and maybe to try to dig a little deeper than what you might expect to see. So yeah, it was just kind of where do these ideas come from? I have no idea, but
Dan Wolken from USA Today. Dan, we appreciate your time as always. Really good stuff, and hopefully we'll catch up with you again soon.
All right, thanks.
That's Dan Wolken from USA Today. There's looking at this article or this kind of series that he's kicked off. It reminded me of a quote. I think it was Kevin McKenna, who obviously has ties back here to Omaha with both University of Nebraska Omaha and with Creighton. But he was the head coach at Indiana State back in the mid to late 2000s. And this quote that he said has stuck with me forever. I think it was him. I know it was an Indiana State head coach, and I'm almost positive it's Kevin McKenna. But he said, if you cheat and win, you'll always get another job. If you lose, they'll never hire you again. So, the advantage to cheating is so much higher than the advantage to doing it right and losing.
It's like the quote, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Yes.
But if you ain't cheating and trying and winning, then what's the point?
Yeah, well, and if you're not winning, that's not to say you have to cheat to win.
No.
But if you're not winning, it doesn't matter if you do things the right way, you'll never work again. At least not in those types of jobs. You might get assistant jobs again, you might do whatever, but you won't get head coaching jobs again if you lose. If you cheat and win, you'll be like, he's still. I mean, look at all the cheaters that have gotten jobs again.
Oh,
Your John Calipari's, your Rick Pitino's, your Urban Meyers, your Kelvin Sampsons, everybody in college football, everybody in college basketball. If you cheat and win, you always get another job.
Wins pay the bills.
You do it right and you lose, enjoy being an assistant for the rest of your life.
What a cruel world.
It really is. It's kind of messed up.
It's
kind of messed up, but that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that
that's interesting.
series from Dan Wolken. Reminder, we're brought to you by Dyer Law. If you've got a personal injury accident, you can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it. Call the Dyer Law team, 402-393-7529, or visit dyer.law to chat with a trusted professional about your personal injury claim. That's DYER.law.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Sports Radio.
Two under center.
Allen in the shotgun through, and he leaps into the end zone.
Murray takes the snap. Four-man rush. He's got time in the pocket. Throws middle.
At Sports Radio.
Two under center. Back to throw. Looking deep down the left sideline. He wants Miami.
Allen in the shotgun through receivers left. Allen.
Down Miami.
Allen in the shotgun, two receivers left, one to the right. Here's the snake, and he leaps into the end zone.
Murray takes the snap. Four-man rush. He's got time in the pocket. Throws middle, and it's intercepted. Niners coming left to right. Tarvarian, touchdown.
Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and for hour number 3, we're on KFOR in Lincoln as well. As always, you can catch us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm Ravi Lulla, Avery Howard here with me, and we are live from Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, the H&H Chevrolet stage. And I wanted to get to, we didn't get to this at 8:30 like I wanted to because we got distracted by something. I don't remember, probably
squirrels,
recruiting talk or something.
Squirrels.
Not actual squirrels, I don't think. Metaphorical squirrels. But I did want to get to this Dingman's, a little Dingman's game we're going to have today. I call it Robbie's Would You Rather. Dingman's Collision Center, 4 great Omaha area locations. They've been first place Best of Omaha for 18 years running. They've been family owned and operated in Omaha for over 25 years. And they can work on any make and model from Fords to Teslas because they've got the latest technology. They also invest in the community with their Give Back program. They give back with every car repair. Check out dingmans.com for more information. All right, Avery, so we've got a couple of would you rather questions here. And then I do want to get into the context of the 5-star quarterbacks and what they mean for Nebraska. But, you know, we can get to it. We got plenty of time. My first would you rather for you, Avery, is this. We're going to keep it Nebraska volleyball, Nebraska football here today. Okay. Would you rather have Nebraska volleyball make the national championship match the next 2 years, but they have no guarantee of winning?
Okay.
Or guarantee Nebraska wins the conference title this year?
Oh, Nebraska football. Because I bet more money on Nebraska getting to the title game for volleyball and at least getting a victory out of one of those two.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to say Nebraska football and a Big Ten title game this year would be pretty electric.
Yeah, I agree because I think volleyball's making it anyway. They don't need my help. They don't need my guarantee. So I think Nebraska football is the right answer.
Yeah.
I was trying to find something that would be somewhat equivalent. Like I was trying to figure out something that would be a tough decision for you. I don't think I quite nailed it. That seemed like that was a little bit too
Unfortunately, volleyball is just too consistent right now and has been. And I mean, never have I known, Nebraska volleyball to not be consistent.
What if I guaranteed you a national title in volleyball versus guaranteeing you a conference title in football?
It's so hard because I want that for this team, but I've also experienced national titles already for volleyball.
Yeah.
And
I also think they're going to win one anyway. Still, I still think they're going to win one anyway.
I know. Okay.
I think I still kind of lean football there too.
Yeah, I know. Because if that means if this Nebraska football team is winning Big Ten championships, that hopefully means there's more on the horizon.
Well, and you're definitely in the college football playoff at that point. If you win the Big Ten.
That's crazy.
Because with 12 teams, you win the Big Ten, you're in. I think you lead.
I don't know. With this committee, they'd be like, man.
Well, so I think that's true. I think with the new 12 team, though, the top 5 conference winners have to get in.
Do we have 5 conference winners this year?
Yeah, no.
No, the coming year it'd be 4. No.
Well, no, because they're guaranteeing a 5th spot too, so it could be a group of 5.
Okay, I get you saying. Okay.
So, I think the Big Ten winner has to be it. If I don't know, they changed the rules so much that I'm having. Imagine? Oh, it'd be crazy around here. Okay. So you have one?
Okay, yeah, I'll keep it on sports then. So funny how we think. Would you rather see Creighton basketball win a national title with your favorite era of Creighton basketball?
Ooh, okay.
Or
okay.
See Nebraska go to national level contention again?
For football?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's really tough. Because those are kind of my two favorites there.
I really got to be careful on what I say about that. So
I really do, Fred. I gotta be careful here. So you're just returning to national contention?
Yeah. And I guess that would be Big Ten cultural playoff. You're competing for
like a New Year's 6 game or something.
Yeah,
So with the 12-team playoff, are we saying they're making the playoff? Or are we saying they're in contention for the playoff?
I would say they're in the playoff. And they're in the playoff.
How consistently are we talking here? Is it just 1 year?
So I don't have any of that in here. I'm just saying Nebraska football has gotten good enough to where they are back in the conversation year after year. What if we add that into the sentence?
Year after year, I think I would take Nebraska football. If you're talking like a one-off, then I'm a little more hesitant.
For sure.
The national title's really hard to pass on. But this is kind of a weird thing, but growing up as a Creighton fan, like winning a national title was never like on my radar because it didn't, they were in the Missouri Valley. Like it didn't feel like a possibility, honestly.
They were good, but it wasn't.
Yeah. It was always like, hey, let's make the Sweet 16. Let's make a little Gonzaga run. Maybe do the Elite 8, whatever, like you you viewed yourself as a Cinderella.
Yeah.
As a Creighton fan growing up in my kind of era. It's not like kids growing up now that's like, yeah, they're in the Big East. Like, of course they're going to make the NCAA tournament, whatever. Like, making the NCAA tournament was a big deal.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard for me to even wrap my mind around the idea of, even me who's been like, yeah, this is a Final Four quality team. Like, this is a team that can, like last year I said it, this year I think it's true as well. It's still hard for me to wrap my mind around like this team actually winning a national title.
So it's not on the radar right now?
It is now, but it's just a harder, like Nebraska being in national contention in college football has always been at the forefront of my mind. Always, right?
Yeah.
And it's been so long since that's been a real thing that I think I gravitate towards that more. If it's year in and year out.
Yeah.
I'm not taking a 1 year, like I'm not taking a 12 seed in the college football playoff over a national title.
100%.
But if you're telling me year in, year out, they are either in the college football playoff or they're in contention for the college football playoff, I think I have to take that.
People are sick of Nebraska football being good.
Yeah, like that would be a nice place to be, is people being like, I know I said earlier, and I don't want Nebraska fans to act like Alabama and Georgia fans are now, but to the point where that's something I have to worry about.
God, again, they're in that game again.
Yeah, or it's like, oh gosh, they lost their, Ohio State fans lost their minds because they're 11-1 this year, right? Because they've lost 3 straight years to Michigan. I would love to have that problem. Like that would be a terrific problem to have. So if we're taking year in, year out, I'll take the football contention. All right, my non-sports would you rather. Okay. Would you rather have your dream job, but you will 100% be fired in 3 years, no matter what, and not let go, like fired?
Like I did something wrong? Or
Not
like,
even that you did something wrong.
This is your it's
just like you're fired.
It's
like,
a 3 year.
You could be doing a great job, and it's like, sorry, you're fired.
But they tell me ahead of time.
No.
Oh, okay.
Like they just, in the back of your head, and then boom, you're going to get fired. In 3 years, okay. Or you win $1 million, but you have to work a job that you hate for the next year.
Heck no. I'm going to do the thing that I love for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if I'm doing the thing I love for 3 years, sorry, Shane, I think we lost both of us on the show.
Yeah, we're definitely out of the show. The internet's been not our friend today.
Yeah.
We're trying.
You guys don't like swimming or what? I mean, come on.
Swimming? What are you talking about?
The stream.
You can turn that mic off, Shane.
Yeah, I've been lost for a little bit, but if my dream job is what I know my dream job to be, if I did it for 3 years, hopefully I'd make enough money like to get me through for a little bit until whatever may come.
Fair.
But yeah, and I would hope I would get fired not for doing anything wrong. It just they were like this really gentle, like, hey, we have to fire for 3 years thing. But yeah, I would.
Maybe they're making cutbacks or I don't know, something.
Unless I get to be a millionaire and I work that. Wait, how long am I working that job?
You're working a job you hate for 1 year. This is why it's tricky for me because I feel like I can do anything for a year.
Now that you say it's 1 year, maybe crap. Because what's going to happen is then once I get that dream job for 3 years, I'm not going to just want it for 3 years.
Is it the first year of that you're doing it?
Well, it's first year of what?
Like the crappy job.
I don't think I realized you said 1 year. Okay, now that you say that, if I could tough it out.
Because you can do anything for a year.
Yeah, if I could tough it out, I would do it.
Like, what do you have in mind when I say a job you
I
would
don't
absolutely
even know,
hate?
honestly.
Because the first thing that came to mind is like cold call sales for me. That would be the thing I would hate the most, I think.
I don't know. I don't know. If it's only a year, for some reason I was thinking you were saying like it was that was your job. It was just like
no, you get
1
year.
It was 1 year. Okay, then I take that back. I would probably grind it out for a year, take the mill, and then I can go pursue my dream job
then you
forever.
Yeah. I think I would. I would for sure take the $1 million.
Yeah.
I'll figure out the dream job later.
Yeah, I think once I don't think I realized you said that. However, unless my guaranteed like dream job was like actually like guaranteed or whatever, that's the part that I think I was drawn into, that like you would get your dream job.
Yeah.
But
you do get fired after 3 years.
True.
With no guarantee that like somebody else hires you for that type of job anymore. I think you gotta take the $1 million.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I'm good with. I guess it's only a year. Okay, we can take that. Okay.
All right, last one here.
Yeah. Okay. Would you rather spend a week in a previous decade of your choosing, or a day in the future, but you don't get to decide how far in advance it is?
Oh, I would definitely spend a week in the past.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't like not knowing things or like ambiguity or especially if it's like, hey, we're going to send you to the year like 2280 and the Earth is a fiery hellscape and we have no idea. Like, no, thank you. I'm not going to survive that 24 hours. Like, I don't want to deal with a Mad Max situation, just like walking in there. So, if I get to choose the week, like that's super easy.
Decade.
Or the decade.
What would you choose?
But it's a week in the decade, right?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I'd probably go like to the 90s. Like the 90s were pretty chill. Like I don't.
Okay.
It was not a big. I was in elementary, middle school.
So not even like a decade you hadn't experienced before in your life.
No, because I don't know. Like things get a little dicey when you get too far back. Like I don't know how. I mean.
You can relive some Chicago Bulls moments there.
Yeah, maybe I'll go hang out in Chicago for a week in like 1998 or something.
Okay.
No, I feel like when you get too far back, you don't have a good enough idea of like what things were actually like.
Yeah.
You kind of just get the highlight reel.
Yeah.
And so, it's like when I would evaluate like college prospects to see if they wanted to come play basketball for me or whatever, like you'd watch these highlight reels and you're like, okay, that looks nice, but like I need to watch full game tape.
You haven't
here.
shown me any defense.
Yeah, it's like I need to see full game tape here to see what's actually happening. I feel like we don't have the full game tape of some of these past decades. I'm like, I don't really know about
That's
that.
fair. Okay.
I also want to avoid like wars for the most part.
That's fair. Okay.
And like.
But you get to choose.
I do get to choose. I do. I think I'm gonna go 90s.
Okay.
I'm pretty comfortable in the 90s.
Okay.
Also, I feel like if I go too far back, the lack of technology would drive me crazy for a week.
See, I was going to say that I kind of think, I know I would. I would choose the past in a heartbeat, and I would go way back, first of all.
How far back we talking
I'd
here?
go way back. My problem is I'd want to choose, like, I would want, like, a few days in every, whatever, like, like, I'm talking explore the West.
Okay, you're like a Lewis and Clark type.
I would want like 3 days in that, but then I would want to go to like the 1920s and give me like 2 days there. And then I would want like 2 days in like the 50s or 60s. And then I would want like high school in the 80s. I want to go to like high school in the 80s.
You want like a Breakfast Club situation?
Kind of. Like I want everything old school before it became like.
For people liked it ironically.
Because like I like the generation I'm in. I grew up in is great. Like I got a childhood without this whole iPhone technology thing. It was great.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do. Like my job basically lives on obviously
on the internet. Yeah.
So I love it, but I just feel like it'd be so sick to see like, I don't know. Like I want to hang out with all my friends and we don't have this thing here. Like driving down Main Street was cool.
You actually have to talk to each other and find activities to
like
do.
My friends and I do that, but like
no,
my mom and her like best friends. It was like, let's just drive down Main Street. It'll be let's see who's walking.
Let's see who's out.
Like, okay, let's go.
That's funny. Yeah. I'll be honest. I played Oregon Trail too much as a kid to ever want to go back to like Lewis and Clark days. Like somebody always dies of dysentery and I'm not interested in that.
Fair. Well, I'd only get like 2 days.
Just you don't think you'll get.
Remember how my favorite movie?
Oh, what was your favorite? Oh, Dancing with Wolves.
Yeah. So that makes sense, right? It lines up.
I want to be Kevin Costner in Dancing with Wolves.
I do. I want to come over the bend. I want to see. Yeah. Play the music. Roll it. Go.
That's incredible. Yeah. No, hard pass for me.
I know. The future just seems too scary. Like imagine going and it's like Wall-E.
Yeah. No, I have.
No.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Wall-E. I'm worried about like the Matrix or like Mad Max or something. Like I don't. No, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like imagine like you get there and it's like floating everything.
Yeah, I don't.
You know.
Yeah, I have no interest. I saw a TikTok about them trying to build like floating cities on Venus, and I was like, no, thank you. That's I hope I'm dead before that happens. All right, that is our Ding Mints Collision Center Would You Rather game for this morning.
I wish StreamYard was on. I want to hear everyone saying.
I know it's back. I think if you want to hop back in. Ken says high school in the 80s was terrible.
Oh, I'd only want like 2 days. Okay. Did I preface that?
Travis asks, do I have to do good at the job that I hate? You don't have to do good, but you do have to try. I think you have to make an effort there. Travis said, go back in time, make some huge sports bets and stock market. I think it meant stock market investments there. Yeah. I mean, if you want to go back to like, I think there was a time in the late 90s where Apple stock was basically nothing.
Oh, yeah.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. But I don't know if I'd want to know what I know now. You know?
Oh, you want to go back in time like blank slate.
Yeah. I don't want to know. Like I don't want to go back and be like, okay, 2020 Avarie knows what's going to happen. I just want to like go and live in it like
interesting
without the fear of what like is coming. I don't know. I just want to like as if like literally I was
Like you grew up in that, like
Yeah.
you would almost be imported with memories from that life
Yeah.
for the 2 days or whatever you were there.
Or like I don't know, this is going down a rabbit hole, but like I talked to my grandma about like, what a Friday night in the 50s was like. Like you would go to the football game and then you would go back to school for the dance. Like how like here is that for the one weekend, like everyone's going. When I was like homecoming in high school, it's like pulling teeth to get everyone to go to the dance.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, not that I went to many, I had soccer, but still the one few times I got to go, it's like, why is this a chore?
Yeah, sure. No, that makes sense.
High school's not everyone's best friend, but imagine like, I don't know, if everyone just played it cool.
It is a different scenario if you wipe your current day memories.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a different scenario for sure.
No, I don't know what 2020 is back in if I go back, I don't know why 2020 is coming to mind.
It's been a weird 3 years. Travis says we did that in the 90s too. I think he's talking about your football games and
okay, well I went to all the Friday night football games. I just mean like afterwards, like
yes, where you like hang out
and like people don't go. Everyone's off in their own,
go their separate ways.
Yeah, and they're like, let's hang out let's all group FaceTime, whatever the heck it is,
Yeah,
like let's all.
Some of
hang
that
out.
might scare you. Like if you were back in the 90s and you knew of some of the stuff that was coming up.
But like, okay, like, can someone tell me how legit Grease was? Because like, how fun it'd be if everyone was like not too cool to dance.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean.
That's
I hear Grease 2 wasn't too legit.
Grease 2?
Yeah.
I've never seen Grease 2.
I don't think anybody should, from what I understand. I think it's
it's pretty bad.
It's one of those Godfather 3 situations. Like nobody needs to watch it.
Or is it like one of those situations where like all of the older movies are like not depicting what anything was like at all? Because I see like
that's what I worry about like the highlight reel. That's what I was talking about. Where it's like,
okay, well,
was that actually what it was like?
Maybe what I'm trying to say is I just want to hop into a movie scene, and then
that's fair. Like yes, let's hop into a 50s movie scene, not the actual 50s.
Yeah, because when I see like movies and they like try to depict what high school looks like now, I'm like, God, make it stop. I'm like, it's not happening. That's not true.
That's fair. That is fair.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was, Shane. That was weird. All right. So I did want to get into that was our Dingman's game. Robbie's Would You Rather.
Am I in StreamYard? Like, can you see me?
No, it is just me.
Okay.
Well, no.
I'm trying.
Yeah. So we'll work on that. The internet's not being super fun today, but I wanted to get to some context of why we've been talking about this Dylan Raiola thing so much.
Yeah.
Because I think some people are a little sick of it.
#annoyed.
Which I get it. I do. It's a lot of rumors and innuendos and deciphering gifts and nonsense. I get it. But here's why, and we've got about 5 minutes here, but I hopefully we can get to it. If not, we'll carry it in the next segment. But here's why this matters, okay? I went back and looked at the recruiting classes, the top 2 quarterbacks, because that's where Raiola is. Consensus. He is one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the class.
Yep. Top
by some services, second by others. He is one of the top 2 guys in the class, okay? It's him and DJ Lagway, who is currently committed to Florida. Like last year, it was Arch Manning was one of the guys. 2 years ago, Drew Roller at Penn State was one, and Kate Klubnik at Clemson was the other. So those guys have all have 1 year or less of starting experience. So I went back to the guys that have started for more than a year.
Okay.
So starting in 2021, and I counted up how many college football playoff appearances there are.
They started in 2021. They
were no, this was their class. Their class of 2021.
Okay.
So all these guys from 2017 to 2021 have started at least a year or over a year, and it's the 2017 to the 2021 classes.
All
okay.
right.
I counted up the number of college football playoff appearances.
Yep.
I counted up the number of national titles.
Okay.
And I counted up the number of Heismans.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, it's worth the hype.
Sure, yeah. Yep.
We're talking about and first round draft picks. I did first round draft picks as well.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. So college football playoff appearances, and I was counting these by hand, so I may have missed a couple.
It's okay.
But it is at least this number.
It's at least, yep.
9 college football playoff appearances from the 10 guys that were one of the top 2 quarterbacks between 2017 and 2021.
Is that good?
9 college football playoff appearances. You're talking about guys like Quinn Ewers in this year.
Yep.
Caleb Williams hasn't made one. He's one of the best guys on this list, and he's not even one of those 9.
That is crazy.
He's one of the Heismans, but he's not one of the college football playoff guys. Bryce Young, you've got Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Tua Tagovailoa, all in that group. 9 college football playoff appearances.
Yeah.
Okay. And 2 of the guys that are best in this group are not part of those 9.
Mhm.
Jaden Daniels,
Mhm.
Heisman winner.
Yep.
Caleb Williams, Heisman winner.
Yep.
Not part of that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So in addition to those 9,
Yeah. Plus.
you also have 3 total Heisman winners
Yep.
because Bryce Young won one as well.
Yep.
But you've got 2 guys that didn't even make college football playoff that also won a Heisman.
Yep.
Okay. And then you've got 4 guys that have already been first-round draft picks and 2 guys who will be in Jane Daniels and Caleb Williams. So you're going to have 6 first-round draft picks out of those 10 guys. Davis Mills has been an NFL starter.
Mhm.
So if he wasn't a first-round draft pick, but
Yeah.
you can count him as 7.
Yeah.
The worst guys on this list are DJU,
Mhm.
and Spencer Rattler. Those are the worst guys on this list. You're not telling me Nebraska would take either of those guys in a heartbeat?
Probably.
And the other 80% of these guys are freaking home runs.
Yeah.
Either NFL guys, national champions, Heisman winners, or college football playoff appearances. That's why we're talking about this.
Uh-huh.
This is not like, and I know Sam brought up Adrian Martinez.
Yeah.
Adrian Martinez is a nice quarterback.
He is.
He is not this.
Yeah, and when he brought that up, it made me want to say, if only Adrian came in right now.
Yeah, if Adrian came
And
in right
maybe
now.
not even came in as a freshman, but like was in the situation he was going into a sophomore or junior season with this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. It's a totally different conversation.
100%.
Because, and even with that staff, go look at Adrian Martinez's freshman year numbers.
And that's what makes me say that is because he came in, yes, developed a little bit because you have to run a certain offense, obviously, after you come in. But he came in pretty untouched, before the everything else.
I feel like he was the exact same player as a senior as he was as a freshman.
Yeah, or at least the highlights and the conversation that was happening before Adrian came in was similar to the conversation people were having his freshman year, and the numbers proved it. Which that's why I'm saying it's an interesting situation when maybe it's also because the pressure you put on yourself after having a freshman year that he kind of did.
Sure. But that's pressure you expect, right?
But I'm interested. Development is the big thing with the staff right now. But it's like, was the development causing a backward spiral, or was it just that mixed with the pressure, mixed with lack of coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge. Real quick, Adrian Martinez's freshman year numbers, okay? 65% completion percentage.
Yep.
2,400 yards.
How many of them are rushing?
Or 2,600 yards passing only.
Yep.
17 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. That's just passing. Rushing, he had another 600 yards and another 8 touchdowns.
Yep.
So you're talking 3,200 yards of total offense, 25 touchdowns, and 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. You would take those numbers from Dylan Raiola tomorrow, wouldn't you?
From Dylan?
Yeah. From any
any quarterback, yeah.
From Nebraska, you take them tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
All right, coming up next, we've got the
In
War Horse.
2023, that is at least.
The War Horse Sportsbook Cleanup coming up next.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook as well. I'm Ravi Lulla. Avarie Howard here with me this morning. Shane Schilberg producing as always. It's time for the Warhorse Sportsbook Sports Cleanup. Reminder, Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Go check out warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook or the Warhorse Casino app for all the details and house rules to check that out over there. Lots of stuff went on this weekend. Obviously, Creighton and Nebraska basketball, we haven't really got to yet. We talked a little bit of Nebraska basketball with Sam. They got a big road win against K-State to kind of complete the bounce back from that Minnesota loss, which was pretty rough. They got the Michigan State win, which all of a sudden that Michigan State win looks a lot better because they just boat raced Baylor this weekend. It was like 45-17 at halftime or something crazy. And then Nebraska only gives up 12 points in the second half to Kansas State, which is also crazy. I think Kansas State went like 4 for 30 from 3-point range, which is not good. I don't know if I'm not a big numbers guy, but that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So Nebraska basketball kind of back on the winning track there and recovered from a couple rough losses to Minnesota and Creighton. Creighton back on the winning track as well after a brutal performance against UNLV. Got a really good win against Alabama on Saturday in what was a really, really good atmosphere for that game. The move from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. I think was a good call there. And one of the louder atmospheres in recent memory for Creighton, and they were able to pull off a big win against Alabama where, they had Kalkbrenner get banged up, and that's going to be kind of the takeaway from that one is how healthy is that ankle kind of moving forward.
Yeah. I would say I watched the game, but probably my favorite thing that came out of that game was some of the signs that I saw. The one being like justice for FSU.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I was like, wow, clever, Creighton.
I think one of them was like FSU got jobbed. There's a bunch of FSU signs in the Creighton fan section, which was hilarious.
It was funny. Like it was a funny tie. Like I didn't expect it. And then once I saw them like start rolling it on the post, I was like, I love it actually. I'm here for it.
It's super funny when you've got these football schools that come into Creighton to play basketball because obviously Alabama's been really good at basketball in their own right. A couple years ago, Oklahoma came in here and Creighton smacked Oklahoma in a pretty big game. And I was sitting right behind the Oklahoma bench, like right behind where kind of the VIP Oklahoma fans sit. And they were talking so much trash about football. And it's like, we don't have a football team, right? Like nobody cares here. But they kept talking. I think it was one of the years that Oklahoma made the playoff, and they're like, and it was kind of in this time of year. So like, oh, we'll see you in the playoff. Oh wait, no, we won't. It's like, nobody's seen Creighton play football in 70 years. Bud.
Yeah, but Creighton's gonna roll and be like, but we'll talk it all day because you guys got it.
And probably a part of it's because they know a lot of the Creighton fans or Nebraska football fans, whatever. But
probably.
It is always funny how the football teams get dragged into the basketball situation, and we saw that with the signs at the Creighton Alabama game. But huge win for Creighton, and a big gutty performance by Kalkbrenner. You hope his ankle's okay. They've got Villanova Wednesday. So that'll be a big one with the Doug McDermott retirement, jersey retirement. He's not retiring from the NBA. Jersey retirement.
Careful.
Yeah, I don't want to. Breaking news here.
Yeah.
The jersey retirement ceremony for Doug McDermott beforehand. Other stuff going on this weekend. Mickey Joseph, a name that we were kind of talking off air. Neither of us had really thought about in a hot minute.
We haven't talked about him.
Appears to be headed. I don't think they finalized it yet, but the report is he is headed to be the head coach at Grambling. That's an HBCU where he's actually got a lot of history coaching at the HBCU level before going to LSU. That's where he made his big jump, was from HBCU to LSU. And he kind of became a national name as an assistant there. So kind of returning to his roots in coaching and getting his first opportunity to coach at the Division I level. He did have a brief stint, I believe a 1-year stint, and at NAI school as their head coach. But so that's interesting for Mickey Joseph and his career trajectory, which appeared like it was going to be derailed about this time last year. So a lot has changed in a year. It feels like a lot longer ago.
That does feel like a long time ago. Yeah.
But he is now apparently looks like he's going to be the head coach over at Grambling. Some other random stuff we've got kicking around here. So FCS football, I know Sam said not a ton of people watch FCS football, which is fine. It is a pretty big deal around here.
It is.
With the Dakota schools.
It is.
And you get
I don't even know what the FCS is.
Come on, Bo. How dare you? It is. I will say this is probably, you're probably not old enough for this, but when they changed the name from 1AA to FCS, like that messes with my head a lot. Like I still find myself calling it 1AA half the time. So we're going to assume that's what Bo was talking about and not that he was being disrespectful.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
But around here,
a lot of grace for Bo right there.
Well, I'm trying to be nice.
Yeah, it's okay.
A lot of high school kids from around here end up playing at those Dakota schools in the FCS level.
They're dominant.
They're really, really good. The wide receiver from Millard West, Williams, I think.
Williams.
Yes. He
and
is.
Who am I missing?
Going up. He's going to be playing, I believe, at South Dakota State. I think it's South Dakota State, right?
It's NDSU.
Is he North Dakota State?
I think it's NDSU.
I get him confused.
Oh, believe me,
There's a lot of
playing all of them
DSUs going on over there,
but
all 4 Dakota schools were in the FCS playoff. 2 of the 4 were in the semifinals. North Dakota State fell in a thriller to Montana that was wrapping up about the same time that the Creighton game was starting.
Yeah.
So we were watching the end of that in the press room, actually, as we're eating our little Italian that they had catered in for us. But that was we were a double overtime 2-point conversion away from it being an NDSU SDSU national championship game
once again,
which
probably.
would have been incredible. But it'll be Montana and SDSU. South Dakota State won their semifinal.
Stupid.
59-0.
I know, stupid.
Which is bonkers. Like, I don't even know what to do with that.
I know.
And it's kind of funny because you look back at some of their scores, and they've been really good all year. They're undefeated. But I think 59-0. If I looked back, I think they had like a 70-7 early in the year.
Jeez.
But
whatever the hell it is,
they've had closer games than that. It's not like they've just been housing people all year. So that's really interesting. We'll see how that goes. Montana versus SDSU. That is January 7th. So they got a little bit of a break here.
Sure do.
Before that one, but congrats to all the local guys playing in those games. We love our high school athletes that end up playing FCS ball up in the Dakotas. Last one for me here is kind of an obscure thing, but so last night, Steph Curry, who I'm a big fan, I know people are aware, didn't hit a 3-pointer in a game for the first time in over 5 years.
Yeah, that's sickening.
It's crazy. Like, he has, and it's the first time he's played at least 30 minutes in a game. So some of those he's either gotten injured in, or hasn't played a lot or whatever. It's the first time he's played 30 minutes in a game.
Yeah, without a 3.
And without a 3 since 2012.
He was just letting everyone else try to have a night. You know, he was like, I'm trying.
Well,
like,
and
I'm literally trying.
The funny thing is they won.
Yeah.
They won that game.
Who'd they play?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It was 118-114. I can't remember who
He's doing some good things.
But he only had 7 points in that game, 0 for 8 from 3-point range. But that is, to kind of put into context how crazy that is, like, it's 2018.
Yeah, that is crazy. Yeah.
Is the last time he played an NBA game without hitting a 3-pointer. That
is crazy.
That's some bonkers stuff.
That is crazy. Not to flip gears like really quick.
No, absolutely. Go for it.
But I was I've been asking basically every single person I know. Have you happened to watch the Coach Prime on Prime?
I haven't yet.
Okay, so did you watch season 1?
I didn't.
Okay, so season 1's Jack State.
Okay, yeah.
And it's interesting because the last episode is they find out Colorado's happening,
that he's
basically.
leaving. Yeah.
And I actually, no one takes the wrong way, please. I really enjoyed it because it was really interesting to be, at the time, this came out when we all knew he was going to be the head coach. And in my era, my generation, we know the name Deion Sanders, but we did not experience Deion Sanders. We're like, my dad loved him growing up, and now he's like, I don't know.
Kind of mound.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to get more insight on who the guy really was.
Sure.
And I'm not going to go back and watch old highlights. Like, I don't know.
Well, and you still don't get a good feel of like him as a person.
Yeah. And so in a way, because even though it's kind of, he gets the final cut of it, it's kind of interesting just to see like why players do want to play for him if he's on, he's on your side, because whatever. So the whole year I'm like trying to get excited about it because they're going to play Colorado and all these things. And now it's Colorado and it's there, and they dropped episode 3 last week, and it's against Nebraska.
Ooh.
It was good. It was good.
Yeah.
But they didn't nearly talk about it as much as I thought they would, because I think a lot of it was the false stuff. That they were like, nothing really came out of it. Let's just cut it.
I see.
We can get it. I don't know if we have time when we get back, but
I might
have to circle back on that.
Yeah, we might have to get back to that later.
But it's interesting.
That is the Warhorse Sportsbook Sports Cleanup. I'll have to catch up on some of that Prime on Prime when I'm in the mood for it. We'll see. Coming up next, we got Jason Cole talking pro football.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Two under center. Back to throw, looking deep down the left sideline. He wants one. He's got it. Touchdown, Miami.
Murray takes the snap. Four-man rush. He's got time in the pocket. Throws middle, and it's intercepted. Niners coming left to right. Tarvarius Ward to the 30, the 20. Full strides to the 10, 5, touchdown.
Wrapping up hour number 3 here, wrapping up the show on a Monday. I'm Ravi Lulla, Avarie Howard here with me. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. As you're getting your morning going, I want to remind you to check out The Beanery. 4 great locations, Gretna, Papillion, Ashland, and 168th and Giles. They roast their own coffee, locally owned and operated. They've got hot, iced, frozen specialty drinks. They got some snacks, muffins, breakfast sandwiches, even gluten-free and vegan options. Check out The Beanery, serving people coffee. We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline by our friend Jason Cole, covering the NFL. He is an author and a Pro Football Hall of Fame selector. Jason, how are you this morning?
I'm fantastic. What's going on, guys?
Oh, not too much. Just trying to get everything covered on a busy Monday here in the great state of Nebraska. And we haven't gotten to a lot of NFL this morning, which is why I'm glad we have you on. Some really interesting stuff happened over the weekend. First and foremost, I think the most surprising result, for me at least, was the way the Bills completely handled the Cowboys. What did you take away from that game? Is that more of a Buffalo is kind of finding their stride and they're who we thought they were going to be before the season? Or is this the Cowboys coming back to earth a little bit?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit of both. Buffalo is a more desperate team, so they need it. And obviously they've got Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
But my biggest takeaway from this, because it's so lopsided and because of the quality of the loss in terms of the way that Buffalo was able to run for them, what was 266 yards?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Dallas away from home and off turf, that combination, they're completely different, particularly on defense. When they can't play to their speed, they've got real problems because they're not very big. And if you watch Micah Parsons, as much as dynamic as he was last year, and he's still dynamic as pass rusher.
Mm-hmm.
But if you run at him, he can't handle you. He can't handle the bigger tackles. He can't handle that kind of physical play. So, I mean, he's not alone, and they're missing one of their defensive tackles. I can't remember. Hankins is healthy, but the other guy that they're playing, the second-round pick from last year, they're just not very good against the run,
mm-hmm.
and they're just not physical. And that's a bad combination going into the playoffs, especially if you want to win in San Francisco. It's just not going to happen.
Speaking of San Francisco, Jason, they had another impressive performance, although against a not very good Cardinals team. As you watch this 49ers team put up 45 points yesterday afternoon, is there any doubt in your mind that they're kind of in a class by themselves as a contender for the Super Bowl? Or do you actually think there's teams that are closer than I do?
Well, I think Philly, if Philly's healthy, Philly is close to them, right? But Philly's not healthy right now, and they look really tired. We're going to see what tonight's about. And now they've got some panic going on with Matt Patricia being the defensive coordinator. But your question is about the 49ers, right?
Yeah.
And the 49ers, again, as long as everybody's upright, they are, they are the best team in football. They're the most consistent. And I was talking to one of their assistant coaches earlier in the week, last week, and I said, if your guys are really a contender, you put this game away in the third quarter and you're essentially coasting for the rest of the game, and you're taking some of the wear and tear off of your bigger stars, right? Like McCaffrey's not having to carry the ball 23, 24, 25 times, and they had him at 18 yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
He did have 5 catches, but that's normal. You take some of the burden off there, you take some of the stress off of them, especially as you're getting ready to go into a Baltimore game. So if you're drawing up what a contender's supposed to look like and how they're supposed to play, especially coming down the stretch, the 49ers are right there. But I will always say, if they lose Trent Williams, and I'm talking about just Trent Williams,
yeah,
they got problems. They got really serious problems on how they run their offense. And that's just one guy. And it's even more important than if you lose Deebo Samuel or Ayuk or Kittle. But that one guy can be a problem. And they've had problems when McCaffrey's been banged up, earlier in the season. So it is ultimately about health and avoiding attrition.
Don't mean to switch gears on you too much entirely here, but speaking from a Chiefs fan perspective, in which they are a 9-5 team, but not as convincing as what Chiefs fans in the NFL have been used to. When they have the Raiders, Bengals, Chargers coming up the next 3 weeks, is there an area for concern for this Chiefs team for maybe the first time in a long time?
Raiders, Bengals, and who's the third one?
Chargers.
Well, I mean, 2 of those 3 should be layup drills, and the Bengals they should beat, right?
I feel like we should be, but there seems like there's just a little bit more doubt in this team right now.
Well, they don't have a wide receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have anybody you can trust.
Right.
I mean, Rashee Rice is a nice sort of short guy screen, intermediate guy. Well, I shouldn't even say intermediate guy. If you're running receiver screens where he can act like a running back and you get some blockers in front of him, Rashee Rice is a terrific young player, but he's really like a number 3 receiver. They're missing a true number 1.
Right.
like even just a guy as good as Juju Smith-Schuster.
Mm-hmm.
They just need a guy who's going to consistently catch the ball, run crossing routes, run normal patterns. And they're not getting that out of either Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore, who they projected were going to be those guys.
Right.
I mean, look, Kadarius Toney is so bad that, look, I just cut him, and not really because I'm angry with him anymore. Like, I'm past being angry with him if I'm a Chiefs fan.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, dude, it's just like, I feel bad for you.
Yeah.
Like, you're just this bad right now, and you need to like go to a new place and a new environment and see if you can make it work, because it ain't gonna work here. And you gotta need that statement to him and to your team. Like, we're not tolerating this kind of play anymore.
Yeah. And
their problem is, like, what are you going to do? Go play Sky Moore? Because he's terrible. Look, the Chiefs are a lot closer to being an 11-win team than they are to what they are. They've blown 3 games with just stupid mistakes. But the fact that those games were close enough to be about stupid mistakes should be concerning to a Chiefs fan.
Yeah, that's why these next 3 games
I'm not
usually saying should, but that's why 2 or 3 of them make me nervous.
Jason, with the struggles the Chiefs have had, obviously their place as a true AFC contender is a little shakier than in years past. We mentioned the Bills kind of maybe rounding into form, but they're in kind of desperation mode right now still as they try and get a playoff spot. Are the Ravens the best team in the AFC to you?
They're the most consistent. Look, the Chiefs are still the best team. They're the reigning champions, and they have the best quarterback in football.
Mm-hmm.
And they have one of the 10 greatest coaches in the history of the game. 5. I mean, we can argue over numbers all we want, but you just walk back and you go, like, that guy's a great coach. That guy's a great quarterback. The defense is terrific.
Mm-hmm.
And when you just catch the ball, we're blowing people out, right?
Yeah.
So they're really close to being a dominant team again. I just think there's this thing about the Chiefs some years where it's like there has to be a degree of difficulty to how they play.
Yeah.
Like they have to feel like they're mentally challenged. And I think that last night, I'm curious because I always like to look at Patrick Mahomes' face. Like when he came off the field after the Toney tipped interception.
Yeah.
And he was so pissed off. And he was pissed off at Kadarius.
Yeah.
But you just get this feeling like, okay, it's time to stop screwing around. Like we're just going to play, we're going to put, pedal to the metal, and we're just going to play great the rest of the season. I wonder if that's what he's thinking in his head. Because if that happens, then they're better than the Ravens. I trust them because I think Lamar Jackson's had a terrific year. He's been incredibly efficient. He's done some wonderful things. He ranks higher than Patrick Mahomes if you're talking about the MVP race. But if you're talking about really who's the better football player, there's no argument there. It's still Patrick Mahomes. And, the question is whether Baltimore can get the Chiefs in Baltimore and catch them on the right day and beat them.
Jason, we got about a minute left here before we let you go. Where do you land on the Dolphins as a real contender?
I'm pretty serious about them. I mean, I know they blew the game against Tennessee, and that was an odd game, and people are still looking at that. And then they romp over a Jets team that just is fragile at this point. So you don't really count that. But they're starting to play well defensively. Their numbers are starting to get more realistic like a contender. They've got Jalen Ramsey on the outside. They're forcing some turnovers. Yeah, they've lost a little bit on their pass rush. But if they're at home and they're able to play at speed, they're really, truly dangerous. And if they can get you into a classic sort of NBA up and down the floor kind of game, because that's what they really are. They're a basketball team on grass.
Mm-hmm.
If they can do that to you, they kill you.
Jason Cole, he is an author. He also is a Pro Football Hall of Fame selector. Jason, we appreciate your time as always. Have a good rest of your week.
Take care. Thanks.
That's Jason Cole, and that is our show for today. Thank you to Avarie Howard for hanging out with me this morning on a Monday. We will be back tomorrow with me and Andrew Rogers here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.